Next year, basically, if you want to pick everybody, you got they want to. Oh, they're on me. They're demanding. And then you start to think.
Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, everyone. Okay, we've got a full house today, so I'm really excited to see so many people here in the COG auditorium. And we've got a great program here today on AI, so I want to thank the staff for putting together the program that we're going to be taking part in here today. So let me start by saying my name is Rodney Lusk. I serve as the COG Board of Directors Chair, and I'm excited to be here. And we have a number of special guests who will be joining us, who will be helping us learn more about artificial intelligence and how it can be used in local government. To begin our meeting today, if we can stand, for those who are able to stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So at this time, as a reminder, all of our meetings are both audio and video recorded as well as streamed on the COG website. We have an extended meeting here today with our agenda taking us until about 4 p.m. So I want to thank the staff even for what we did earlier today, but what we'll be doing even after the meeting here. And please feel free if you need to step out. We do have restrooms. Just go through the main hallway, make a right, and we have restroom facilities. I also wanted to flag 2 upcoming events. Please be sure that you have the COG Congressional Delegation Reception scheduled for October 20th on your calendars. At this reception, we'll be joined by Representatives Beyer, and Beyer, thank you for being here today. He's walked around and introduced himself to a number of folks. We'll also have Representatives Ivey, Hoyer, Raskin, McLean, Delaney, and Vindman, who will be available at that important meeting. It's also important that we take advantage of this opportunity to represent the region. And if you have not done so, please make sure to register to attend that event. Secondly, please save the date for COG's annual membership meeting, which will be held with an awards reception on December 3rd. We'll be returning to the rooftop of the HQO at DC Water, which is a magnificent facility, and really enjoyed having the opportunity to participate in years past. So look forward to having all of you there. And then next, moving on to agenda item number 3, we have any amendments to today's agenda. I want to ask if there are any amendments to today's agenda. Okay, seeing none, we will move on. So thank you. Next, I'm going to turn the program over to our Executive Director, Clark Mercer, for his report. Mr. Mercer, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. We'll start by just piggybacking on the congressional delegation reception. We're going to be joined as well by a soon-to-be former COG member and new member of Congress, James Walkinshaw.
Yeah.
So, James joins an illustrious crew by Senator Also Brooks being another member who moved on from COG to the Hill within the last year, so that's fantastic. Quick shout out to our staff here at COG for pulling this day together. John Bayless, our new IT director, Monica, Simone. This is an all-day effort to look at AI's use in local government. And there's a lot going on in the district. We'll talk a little bit of that in my report, but kind of the why now and why did we build for this? If you look at Governor Moore, Governor Youngkin, and Mayor Bowser's growth plans, AI is in all 3. And it's an area that our tri-state region has identified as tremendous growth. There's a report that came out last week that also articulated that the DC area is the most susceptible in the country to job loss due to AI. So this is an important issue that needs to be front and center, and it's one that I don't know much about. So I'm just very grateful. Joe Paul will be running much of this meeting from one speaker to the next. He's a tremendous business leader in this region, so I thank him for being here. Chuck Wemple is my counterpart from Houston, Galveston. I will tell you, I look to that Council of Governments for best practices across the board. Chuck is a mentor and a tremendous asset. He flew here from Houston for this. And of course, we'll hear from our local leaders and Congressman Beyer at the federal level. So we've got just a terrific lineup today. In your packet, there are a couple updates I encourage you to read. One is our Unhoused and Homelessness Committee has been meeting regularly to talk about impacts of what has happened at the federal level and to the district and what impacts that has on surrounding jurisdictions. Please read through that and ask questions. The second is an overview and reminder of the mutual aid agreement. We've had lots of questions about the mutual aid agreement. That is the ability for fire, rescue, police to respond across jurisdictional boundaries, rules of engagement, who has authority, when do you say yes, and what does that approval process look like at each jurisdictional level. I really, really encourage you to talk to your CAOs and get a clear sense of when firefighters respond mutual aid, what does the approval look like when police responds mutual aid, when the federal government responds, asks for mutual aid, what that approval process looks like. The CAOs have been meeting on the regular to talk about that, and it's a very impressive program we run, but one that I would kind of elevate given all that is happening right now in the district and at the federal level. A couple of other meetings to flag that are coming up. DMV Moves will wrap up this fall. We have two events that have been added recently that I just want to flag that should be in your inboxes. On the 22nd is an all-day tour of our transit systems in the region. And that will start at the Metro's Operations Center on Eisenhower Avenue. Attendees will have breakfast, have lunch, and travel on Metro, travel on bus, talk about passenger rail, and it will really give you a deeper sense of some of the recommendations that the DMV Moves Task Force will be considering making this fall. On October 24th, this invite will go out within the next day or two. At Union Station, we will have a DMV Moves half day devoted just to passenger rail. DMV Moves is about transit writ large. We have not spent enough time talking about passenger rail, MARC, VRE, and the importance of passenger rail to the transit system in general. So we will hear what's going on at Union Station, Department of Transportation. We'll hear directly from MARC and VRE. And I encourage, that's going to be a wider invitation because a lot has happened in the last 5 years with passenger rail, acquisition of right-of-way, rebuilding Long Bridge. So we're going to be invited legislators and their staffs as well to join you. You have a handout at your desk there for October 22nd from 8 to 4 here. Susan Wade's our new Human Resources Director. She has rekindled the group of HR directors across the region. They'll be meeting here from 8 to 4 for a whole day deep dive on HR. Please, that QR code, bring it back to your local jurisdiction. Share that with your HR colleagues across your local governments. That would be super helpful. And with that, the rest of my report is written and submitted to you, Chair, and that concludes my remarks. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mercer. I appreciate that. We will now move to agenda item number 5, which is approval of the minutes from our June 11th, 2025 meeting. Is there a motion?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
Thank you very much. So are there any abstentions or nay votes? Excuse me. Any abstentions or nay votes? Okay, hearing none, the motion passes. We'll move now to agenda item number 6, which is the consent agenda. We have 2 resolutions that are on the docket for the consent agenda today. They can be found on page 20 of the board package. I move approval of the consent agenda. Is there a second? Okay, we have a motion and a second. I will now call for the votes. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, ayes have it, and the motion carries. Thank you. Next, I would like to introduce the focus of our discussion today, which is this discussion on AI and its introduction here in local government. So this morning, I want to acknowledge that we had a really good program where many of the folks who are here were able to learn a little bit more about artificial intelligence and then also to see an application and understand how it's being applied in a public safety capacity. And I will say it was very, very informative just to have that level of discussion. And I think there were some really good questions that were asked at the conclusion of it. So we're really off, I think, to a very good start from this morning. So now what I'd like to do is state for this afternoon, we are very fortunate to have Congressman Beyer here. And again, I want to acknowledge and thank him for being a part of this program. Additionally, I'd like to introduce John Paul, who is the founder and CEO of Optima Nova and is a leader in artificial intelligence adoption. Mr. Paul's company helps organizations integrate artificial intelligence to streamline operations, collect data-driven insights, and modernize for the future. He is the author of AI for Good. And I will now be turning it over to Mr. Paul to introduce our focus for today and to facilitate our remaining sessions and speakers. Mr. Paul, welcome, and thank you so very much for being a part of this AI event, and thank you for coordinating the conversations today.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. A real quick correction to the minutes. It's Joe Paul, even though I've been called worse, but it's Joe Paul. Right. Thank you. I'm going to take the stand. Thank you, Mr. Chair. This morning, we had an opportunity to dive deep into AI for cybersecurity, as well as AI for public safety. And we heard from several experts, and we had CIOs, CTOs in the room, elected officials. We really had an opportunity to dive deep. This afternoon, we're taking the scope a little closer to home, and we're going to be learning from best practices from Houston. We'll be hearing stories. We have panel. We have a whole afternoon planned for you, and I'll keep my comments brief so we can respect the Congressman's time. Let's go to the next. Old school. Need a little grease. As we look at how AI is transforming local government, three themes stand out. First, you see public service automation. AI is taking on routine government tasks. And I want you all to understand the truth about artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence isn't coming for your jobs. It is not. However, the people who are leveraging artificial intelligence are. And there's an increasing gap between those who know and those who don't. And so one of the things that we want to make sure that you leave with today is plenty of aha moments, beginning with this slide. So first, public service automation. AI is taking on routine government tasks, freeing staff to focus on higher value work. And that's exactly what AI is designed to do, to substitute the rote, mundane, automatable tasks that you really just don't want to do that take a lot of time. But I firmly believe that there should always be a human in the loop. There is no space or world that I believe that AI should be doing everything, because as I'll touch on later on in my comments, AI can go wrong. Second, data-driven decision-making. AI gives leaders the ability to analyze massive volumes of data. Now, the cool thing about AI is that AI is basically replicating what we do. When I speak to my son about what AI is, or when we teach at local schools about what AI is, we basically put it in simple terms. AI, imagine you have a stuffed animal, a teddy bear, and this teddy bear is extremely capable. All you have to do is tell it to do something, and it will do it. And it has access to all the information that's out there. Imagine that you can just tell that puppy or that doll to do something and it'll actually do it. AI basically just replicates human experience. It just does it faster. And third, enhanced citizen engagement. I think one of the missed opportunities is we don't invite the people to the table that absolutely should be here. A lot of times we're solving problems for communities that have no say in those solutions. And I would argue that whoever's closest to the problem is closest to what? There you go, gold star for whoever participated. All right. So again, this isn't just about efficiency. It's about building more responsive, equitable emphasis on equitable and effective local governments. As you can see, AI is already reshaping how local governments deliver services, make decisions, and connect with citizens. We've heard some tremendous examples today. Which brings us perfectly to our next speaker. The Honorable Congressman Don Beyer has spent his career at the intersection of public service, business, and diplomacy. From his time as the Lieutenant Governor of Virginia to his service as U.S. Ambassador to Switzerland, and now in Congress, he's been a consistent voice on economic innovation, technology, and equity. Please join me in welcoming the Honorable Congressman Don Beyer.
Joe, thank you very, very much. I'm thrilled to be here. My first ever invitation to COG. I'm delighted for so many reasons. Number one, my parents graduated from Western High School a long time ago. And my chief of staff's mother, Sally Cooper Capers, was the driving force between turning it over to Duke Ellington. My grandkids in Alexandria are fifth generation Washingtonians, which for many of us is like coming over on the Mayflower. I just, you know, when my friends my age retire and move to South Carolina or Florida, I think, what are you thinking? You're already living in the best place in the world, in Washington, greater Washington, D.C. It's just crazy. I'm delighted to be here with my favorite mayor, Gaskins, and an Alexandrian, and the new executive director of COG in Alexandria. And this is just great. And I'm so excited about James Walkinshaw winning last night. You know, he replaced a dear friend of more than 40 years, Jerry Conley, who had been a COG leader. And now James. They talk about the school to prison pipeline. I think we got the COG to Congress pipeline going now. And but James will be great. And he starts off with 75% in his first election, which is a good thing. And finally, I just want to thank you for your service. You know, I've had a chance to do lots of different leadership roles, but I've never been brave enough to run for local office. So thank you for doing it. You know, when you're lieutenant governor or something, nobody knows where you are, which is just fine. When you're mayor of Alexandria or representing the Franconia district, you're in trouble. So I really appreciate it. Before talking about AI, though, I want to give you a quick update on the appropriations process, because I know it affects every one of us. The government funding runs out in a couple of days, September 30th. We are plugging away at some kind of continuing resolution. I know the president has said he wants a continuing resolution into January 31st next year. It's not going to go easily, though, because after the big ugly bill, big beautiful bill, depending on your perspective, there's so much wrong right now that people aren't just going to roll over and say, here's your continuing resolution. So there's lots and lots of uncertainty. The bills that have been either put together or passed out of the House so far, the appropriations bills, are filled, from my perspective, with more poison pills than we've ever seen before. A lot of the things that the president has done through executive action are built into these appropriations bills that undo so much of what we've built up over the last 40 years. So we're going to be fighting them as hard as we can. We have made clear that we're open to working with the Republicans in the House and Senate on negotiating something that's acceptable to all, recognizing that they have the majority. But we have not solved the challenge of needing 60 votes to pass an appropriations bill because of the filibuster in the Senate. At the same time, having a president who seems to impound whatever he wants. So we go through all the process and then it doesn't get spent. Or you have a rescission bill to rescind spending that only requires 50 votes. So there's no sense to have a deal on Monday that takes 60 and then reverse it on Tuesday with 50. That whole notion of bad faith on the appropriations is a great concern, and we don't know where it's going to go. And finally, there's still the DC funding. You know, as the DC people know, we're $1 billion short. And it was a mistake. They fixed it in the Senate on almost a unanimous vote. For some reason, there's hostility in the House from Speaker Johnson and others who don't want to take the vote on the House floor, which would pass overwhelmingly. It would probably get 3/4 vote for it, but it has to be put to a vote first. I'm sorry, we need to do that as best we can. Shifting to AI, I co-chair the AI caucus, 2 Republicans, 2 Democrats, and it's changed a lot since GPT-3 came out. You know, 4 or 5 years ago, we would get together for lunch every month and talk about the Terminator. But now with ChatGPT, all of a sudden this explosion where everyone's interested in it and excited about it. And the primary purpose of the caucus is just educate the members of Congress and particularly their staffs about what AI means. For example, this morning at 10 o'clock, the Bipartisan Policy Center came in and did a great briefing on AI's use in healthcare right now. The advances on, and for example, on data imaging. Jeff Hinton, who's the famous scientist who really was the first breakthrough genius on AI, won the Nobel Prize for it. 10 years ago said, 10 years from now, we won't need any radiologists because AI imaging is so powerful. What we found out is we now have a global shortage of radiologists because the AI imaging is so powerful, we need more radiologists to interpret it, to use it for more good things. So the breakthroughs on diagnosing breast cancer, lung cancer, particularly for me and for others, pancreatic cancer, which is the breakthrough, or with poor Jared Connolly with the esophageal cancer, be able to discover these early enough to be able to make a difference. Although the most interesting thing this morning was the biggest implementation of AI in medical practices right now is with the so-called scribes. You know, every doctor for the last 30 years has been complaining that they spend 3/4 of their time taking notes, more time typing than talking to their patients. And with the AI scribe, where it's just listening to the whole conversations, transcribing it, turning it into meaningful notes that are quickly reviewed by the doctor, is saving enormous amounts of time, productivity, and efficiency. But much, much more to come from for there. It obviously became a much bigger deal after ChatGPT in the Biden administration. So Joe Biden's executive order on AI was the largest executive order ever promulgated by an American president. Did a lot of very good things, including, I think most importantly, setting up the AI Safety Center out at NIST, led by Elizabeth Kelly, Ben Buchanan, and others, to actually do oversight of federal government's use of AI and also trying to promulgate standards for the responsible use of AI for all the companies in America and hopefully the world, and certainly for us. And what that led to then is an explosion of AI bills, not just in Congress, but at the state and local level. Last year, there were 700 AI bills in state governments, state legislatures. I think probably a third of them were in California alone. But all kinds of people trying to react to it. And then we had 100 just in Congress last year. We didn't pass a single one. But one of the things we did do was Speaker Johnson, Hakeem Jeffries appointed a 24-person bipartisan task force, 12 Democrats, 12 Republicans, 12 women, 12 men. I had the pleasure of serving on it. That actually spent the whole year doing the really deep dive, a great 270-page report, which really is the blueprint for nationally what we should be doing in terms of AI policy. Generated 84 policy recommendations that were unanimous, Dems and Republicans. Yet to pass any of them, but the framework's out there. The two big things that happened this year, first is we did pass the Take It Down Act, pretty much unanimously in both houses, that created the mandate that if someone takes an ugly picture of Rodney Lusk and modifies it with artificial intelligence and has them doing all kinds of interesting things, you can actually force them to take it down. There's another one called I think it's some cool, like the Vengeance Act or the Revenge Act by AOC, that would actually make it a commercial or a litigation cause of action when somebody abuses your likeness in artificial intelligence. Among the most important ones that I think will pass soon would be prohibiting artificial intelligence in political advertising, period. And then if it's used in other commercial advertising, then it'd be disclosed in big letters, but much, much more to come. One of the other big thing that happens this year was in the big, beautiful bill, there was a moratorium on state and local governments ever doing anything on AI. And the congressional argument was it will be chaos. This is sort of the congressional version of the Dillon rule on AI. You can't do it unless we tell you you can do it. However, if those of you who are skeptical about Congress being able to get anything done, it also means that it could be 10 years with nobody doing anything. So I fought it. We were able to take it out of the bills, that we don't want to take away your ability to do AI unless and until we actually do something on a national scale, and then hopefully on a global scale. And then we move on. The other thing that there's many different pieces. One of the things I'm most concerned about is that in the new Trump executive order, largely good. One of the worst parts is the anti-woke AI provisions. You know, we know how much they hate DEI. The problem is that every one of us likes the idea of true AI neutrality, that AIs are trained on facts and on science. But the fixation on anti-woke has been anything but neutral. And you see the best example is Elon Musk's Grok AI, which has been spouting racism, misinformation, anti-Semitism, and supporting Adolf Hitler. That's not what anti-woke is supposed to mean. And so we really need to move on from there. I had a chance to visit one of the big data centers again last week, Equinix, out in Loudoun County. Fascinating, but you know, and I met with Tom Gordy, Republican Prince William supervisor the other day, who said that they have 1 million square feet built and 7 or 8 million more permitted, and the next data center electricity availability is in 7 years. So it's really weird. As you probably know, something, I don't want to over-exaggerate, but 2/3 to 3/4 of the data centers in the world are right here. And because latency, which is the time it takes for information to go from one place to another, is really important in AI, you measure it in milliseconds, they want to be next to each other. So everyone still wants to come be next to Loudoun County and Prince William right now, creating enormous water demands and electricity demands. The Virginians probably saw that Dominion last week petitioned the State Corporation Commission for a 15% base rate increase next year. We thought 6 and 7% inflation was bad. 15 is a killer. And we learned the other day at Equinix that one ChatGPT search takes up 50 milliliters of water, which is one search. So the water needs are enormous. The Chinese have done one interesting thing is they've built their latest data center underwater. Offshore. So we may be moving in that direction just to deal with the enormous water needs that come all for cooling. So there needs to be balance. I'm distressed with what the Trump administration has done with moving away from wind energy, from solar, from all the other clean energy sources, because if you think that we need an all of the above energy policy, we need all of the above, not just fossil fuels. We need everything else if we're going to handle this enormous surge in energy needs that the data centers are providing. On the positive side, legislatively in Congress, probably the two big things coming are, and I do anticipate that they'll pass sometime soon. One is the primary recommendation from the AI task force that Joe Biden put together, which is the creation of it's called NAIR, but it's the creation of a major large language model like ChatGPT or Claude or Gemini that is available for researchers, academics, the public, for all of us for free, and that is built on curated data. For example, with Sam Altman, when he built GPT-3, GPT-4, he went and scanned all 6 trillion words on the internet. Well, you don't have to be a genius to know that a lot of those 6 trillion words are not true, because everybody's craziness is out there also. All that is built in to ChatGPT. So the notion of actually doing something, because if you jump back 10 years when we first started talking about AI, the very first thing that came up is if all you put in are older white male business CEOs, it's only going to recommend older white male to be the next CEO. That the demographic challenge of data that, for example, leaves out all women or leaves out all people of color is not going to give you the right kind of thing. So you want to build databases that are, in fact, as neutral as you possibly can be. And so the notion is you let the National Science Foundation and the universities build something into a national model. The other thing that's incredibly relevant is oversight of these large language models. That, you know, the FDA, we don't allow them to sell a drug out until it's been tested and tested and tested again. And yet we're putting these large language models out there that if they've been tested, we don't know how or when. We don't know what their data structure is. And it's not that we want to own it or steal their algorithms, but we want to make sure that all the safety stuff is built in. So the large language foundational transparency model is really, really important. And part of that is, as you know well, American people's trust in virtually every institution is at an all-time low, even on car dealers, members of Congress. It's terrible. and universities and the church. And so we have that challenge too. Every time there's another hallucination with a large language model or with AI, the trust goes down. So we need to do everything we can to build the trust up so people really believe that it works. And then we move to workforce displacement, which is going to be very relevant for you. We've already lost 300,000 federal employees this year nationally. It's a terrible thing. A year ago, we had twice as many jobs advertised as people looking for it. That number is flipped. We now have fewer jobs advertised than people looking for work for the first time in a long, long time in America. And Dario Amodei, the president and founder of Anthropic, did a famous interview 3-4 weeks ago where he said, in the next 2 years, so say he's exaggerating 5 years, AI could eliminate 25 to 50% of the white collar workers in America. There are 18 million white collar workers in America. You know, in the car business, if number seems to be too good, cut it in half and then cut it in half again. If you still like it, use it. So take that, cut the 50% to 25 to 12 and a half. You're still talking 1.5 million workers displaced overnight. I again think about it, forgive my local issues, but running car dealerships, I know every back office has an accounts payable, an accounts receivable, a payroll person, someone who reconciles the money. You have 4 or 5 good people. All could be eliminated in a couple of months by one AI agent. And that's something that we as leaders have to be thinking about long term. In every technological breakthrough in the history of humankind has led to more jobs. But most of the, like the agricultural revolution or the industrial revolution, have taken place over 100 years or 50 years or 30 years, not over 2 years or 3 years. And how we as leaders adapt to that is going to be critically, critically important and scary. We also, President Trump has talked about the sort of the no holds barred, no regulation, the race against China on artificial intelligence. And people like Mark Warner, who chaired the Intel committee, are very concerned if China has the AI better than we do. It gets to artificial general intelligence first. There's another perspective, though, that I'd really love you to think seriously about, which is that the race for AI dominance may also be the race for who loses control of their AI first. The challenge is none of us know, and I read as much as I can, where consciousness comes from, except that I know my dog has a huge personality with the brain about the size of a walnut. So we're building the most intelligent machines ever, way smarter than we are. Why do we think that it won't evolve consciousness? Or what in computer science they call the alignment problem. How do we align what the AI is going to want with what we want? No one's figured that out yet. The throwaway example is we taught the most powerful chess computer in the world. They didn't. The old way is they gave it 1,000 chess games and let it watch it all. The new way is they just tell them the rules of chess and let it figure it out itself. And no chess master can beat it right now. The problem is every time you play it, it wins. It wants to win. How did we build in the fact that the computer wanted to win every chess game? We don't know what it wants, and we're not going to know what it wants. There's a new book that's just out this week by a guy named Nathaniel Soares called If Anyone Builds It, Everyone Dies. And I recommend that you download it and listen to it or read it, because among the things that we have to do as responsible leaders for our nation is enjoy the extraordinary benefits of artificial intelligence, but also be aware that we don't want to lose control of it. We want it to make our healthcare better. We want to live to be 100, but we also don't want to live in a world where we are the servants to AI. Or in worst case, it says, why do we need you? There's lots more going out there. I'm in the weird, wonderful position as an AI undergraduate at George Mason that I'm extraordinarily excited about what AI is going to mean for all of our lives. And at the same time, want to be really aware and cautious of massive change like this. It also can really disrupt our lives and disrupt those of us in leadership who are trying to make lives for all of our constituents better. So with that, Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Thank you very much. And I'll just make one quick point, which is extremely insightful, and just appreciate the recognition of the opportunity and the risk. I mean, we really got to look at this from both perspectives, and then thinking about, how we deploy this in a way that creates trust and transparency for those who are going to be users. So thank you very much for your talk with us today, and appreciate your participation here and then the work that you're doing in Congress as well. We know that you're there to address some pretty tough issues right now, and the last point I'll make is looking at where we are on the federal employment, and clearly there's a downstream effect from that, and that's going to be the contractors. So what we see first is what's happening with that, but then second, there will be that second tail. So appreciate your work and energy and commitment to protecting this region.
Excellent. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So the congressman has been generous with his time. We'd like to open the floor to 2, maybe 3 questions if you're good, but we'll say 2 questions to start off anywhere. We'll give the board of directors first right of refusal.
Please, Vice Chair Allen, please.
Vice Chair Allen.
Thanks. As you talked in your last part, Congressman, about the risks, I really appreciated your joke about watching the Terminator in the early days. So I would just kind of ask if you want to share or impart any advice for us as policymakers. None of us have degrees in AI. Well, actually, I'm not sure if everybody does, but most of us don't have degrees in AI. It's such an emerging and innovative field. We're probably trying as policymakers trying to catch up on this, right? And I think we can inherently understand the opportunity and the risk. Just any advice you have for local policymakers to be thinking about how to look at those risks, whether they be in government, whether they be with constituent management, anything that you just want to share with us about how to help identify the risk and safeguard?
Yeah, interestingly, happily, I think the only firm that I know in America that has dedicated itself to studying the risks is in Arlington, Virginia, called Trustable AI. And they're actually trying to build a taxonomy of risks, looking, sort of use by use case, what's the worst that could happen? So I would encourage your team, your leadership, to reach out to them and bring them in. And then probably the big 3, number 1 is what happens in employment. How do we adapt to that? In the middle of the night, I'll think, well, if suddenly we have 2 million college-educated, white-collar workers unemployed, can we find a way to double our teacher budgets and put them in classrooms? Find some useful way to raise our overall human capital, especially after the 8th and 12th grade reading and math scores we read about this morning. Second is the environmental impact. One of the bills we have on the Hill that I sponsor is the environmental impact of the large language model, of the data centers. Because we know the water, we know the energy. Virginia's Dominion in the last couple of years has doubled the amount of fuel that they think they're going to need between now and 2050 because of the rise of the data centers. What does that mean for all of us? And then number 3 is the existential risks. And there is trying to, the harder part about the existential risk is, like with the atomic bomb, you can't uninvent the atomic bomb. So how do you slow it down? Not so much that you stop it, but do you slow it down so that we have a chance from a policy side to step up and figure out, what do we make sure that AI is always under our control rather than vice versa? And there are things like, are there kill switches? Once an artificial intelligence is on the internet, all of a sudden it has access to machines. You can unplug it here, but all of a sudden it's in every machine in the world. So there are big, and by the way, I would encourage you too, for those of you who want to dive deeper, is to bring in the very best people around the country to talk about this. And we can certainly help you with it. For example, Stuart Russell at Berkeley wrote the textbook on artificial intelligence that everybody uses. But he's also very aware of the downside risks. And he's the kind of person you want to come talk to about it. Yeah.
Thank you.
Sure. Okay, I think I saw a question to my left, Chair Karatonis.
Thank you. Congressman, thank you for making a balanced argument on both the opportunities and the enormous risks. And frankly, you see how uninterested we are in this. So one question that we had this morning, we asked who would be charged with, on the side of the U.S. government with beginning a regulation, identifying what are risk avoidance and mitigation strategies, et cetera. And the answer was the National Institute of Standards. But at the same time, I understood that, well, this is the National Institute of Standards. It doesn't mean that everybody adopts that. That doesn't mean, it's kind of a late effort and not really a binding process that would, be good for all applicants, for all applications, and for all models, et cetera. So is that in your, do you envision to actually move towards a national effort on this?
Yeah, very much. And even more so, Chairman Garantanis, is that we move to an international. Because it does at the bottom line, we end up with a wonderful NIST framework that is the law in America, but the Chinese don't obey it, and the Indians don't obey it, and the Russians. We need a Geneva Convention on artificial intelligence. And we need to lead it, and it needs to come from our president. The good news is that at least the folks at OSTP in the White House, they're smart, they're pretty good. David Sachs and others. In the short run and the long run, it's going to have to be presidential leadership. The kind of thing that engages Xi and Putin and the rest of it in doing this. One of the pieces of legislation we had actually would mandate that the NIST standards be used by any company or any governmental agency that is contracting with the Northrop Grumman or ChatGPT or whoever, that the NIST framework is in place on that. That was actually unanimously bipartisan coming out of the task force. So there's some hope there. But we needed the step up from the White House to get it done. And again, it's great if we do it, but we can't stop there.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions?
All right, good luck this time.
Thank you. Thank you. Let's hear it for the congressman. Fantastic, fantastic. It's not, you're in a place where you need to be when the congressman shows up. So this is fantastic. Thank you, Congressman. We just talked about how AI is transforming local government, but none of this work happens in isolation. Counties are truly on the front lines of this work. And we have the honor and pleasure for the next half hour to introduce the National Association of Counties. Read, oh, here we go, Rita, perfect. All right, no, Rita Reynolds. Yeah, no, I got you. I was trying to run a little. Fantastic. So this is a quick commercial break. There you go. Rock and roll. Let's hear for NACO.
Great. Well, thank you all so much. It's a pleasure to be here. So my name is Seamus Dowdle. I'm the Legislative Director for Telecommunications and Technology at the National Association of Counties. We're thrilled to be talking today about some of our AI initiatives that we've brought our members on across the last few years. We've launched various committees and task forces to look at how the rise of AI and generative AI is really creating a new digital transformation for local governments. And I'm joined by my great colleague, Rita Reynolds, who is going to tag team this presentation with me. So I'm going to start with just a quick overview of what our members have been doing with respect to federal advocacy as we contribute our conversation and perspective from local government to a lot of what the congressman mentioned and the different priorities that are going on with artificial intelligence in Washington, D.C. So if we could go to the next slide, what I will share with you all is that across the last few years, we have worked with our members to establish a policy platform. A lot of our members, maybe 2-3 years ago, were not too familiar with the ins and outs of artificial intelligence. So our president at the time, Denise Winfrey, a board member from Will County, Illinois, launched an Artificial Intelligence Exploratory Committee. We also had various policy steering committees begin to look into what are some of the different federal policy requests and asks that we can make to allow artificial intelligence to be deployed at the local government level, but certainly to do so in a responsible manner. And we quickly found throughout that journey that there are a lot of contributions that local government can make in this space. Particularly, we came out with a policy primer at the beginning of this year that sought to highlight some of the key ways that counties can contribute to this conversation. And I think the number one bullet point you see on this list came up time and again as different county commissioners at the elected level, but also county staff that we engage, whether it be a CIO or a director of elections or an assessor, whoever it may be. We found that there needs to be an intergovernmental governance structure that is able to address the various uses of generative AI that we're seeing in different sectors. And really in lockstep with this recommendation and ask is that we have some sort of body that can share information across the different levels of government. So an easy, streamlined, and secure way for the federal government to keep state and locals up to date on the latest trends, and vice versa. If there is maybe a breach that is happening with respect to cybersecurity that is powered or fueled by AI and it's hitting different local governments, how can we share that information back with different governmental partners to get ahead of that threat? But we're also looking at a lot of different initiatives that promote the positives of AI. So we're asking for direct funding assistance at the local level to support things like digital literacy, which we've seen be a goal for areas such as broadband adoption across the last 5 to 10 years, especially during the COVID pandemic, but really expanding that work to include AI. Our residents are going to be interacting on an increasing basis in the future with chatbots that they may come across on the county website or the local government website. Maybe actually in the office, they're being pre-screened before they're referred to a particular program, and that's all powered by AI. So how do we kind of extend literacy and education to our residents, and what role can county governments play in that process? We're also looking at workforce development. This is a technology that is already transitioning and evolving within the workforce. We're seeing new areas where reskilling is becoming an increased need. How do we keep employees, even within the county, up to speed on different technologies that are coming out as a result of generative AI really being embedded in different tools that we may utilize through our vendors to deliver services? And then we're seeing this in other spaces as well. So if you think about the election space, we have a lot of counties who administer the nation's elections. And so we're thinking about how do we mitigate some of those negative use cases with generative AI as it relates to elections. And we've been able to work with the Elections Assistance Commission to call for guidance on how we can deal with artificial intelligence, both in terms of utilizing it throughout the elections process. So there are some real efficiency gains that can be made, but also reassuring residents who want to ensure that use is transparent, that it's ethical, that it's using data in an appropriate way. And then even in the broader ecosystem and in terms of what's on the internet, finding a way to deal with the rising tide of information that is maybe fueled by artificial intelligence, but is inaccurate related to where to go to cast your ballot or what information is out there about in a local election. So we're really looking at that space as well. I'll kind of work through the rest on this list here at a little bit of a higher pace because I want to provide some more clear examples of what we're seeing on the federal policy landscape across the White House and Congress. But we're also looking for more funding and resources from other independent agencies to help support consumers as they're interacting in an online environment that has more AI present in our feeds. We're also looking to promote a model process for both data privacy and data governance. So to really unlock the benefits of artificial intelligence and generative AI, you need to have pretty robust data governance internally. And there's also an increased need to ensure that data sets, especially those that need to be protected due to federal law, can remain so as a county or a city looks to implement AI within certain services. And then lastly, throughout this whole process, our members have certainly seen that having public engagement and participation in this policymaking process is absolutely essential. So we've been fortunate enough to organize our members to think through these policy challenges and to share them with stakeholders in DC. And I want to touch on just a few quick updates that we have been monitoring recently. And I'll start with the White House's AI Action Plan. So this came out, this was released by the White House Office of Science and Technology Policy on July 23rd. You heard the congressman briefly mention the work of the OSTP. And the White House is proposing over 90 policy directives related to artificial intelligence, and those are going directly to a variety of federal agencies. There is a lot that is included in this action plan, but to kind of summarize where we are most focused, first and foremost, we did see that the action plan is establishing a new artificial intelligence Information Sharing Analysis Center. So we were happy to see that. We expect and we look forward to having local government participation in that process so counties and cities can stay abreast of the latest developments in AI. We're also seeing a lot of directives spread across a number of agencies to support workforce readiness, reskilling, and digital literacy and education campaigns. We expect a lot of those initiatives will run through existing grant programs as opposed to creating new programs, but we are largely monitoring the agencies as they begin to move forward with those directives. There are some areas where we're looking to provide more clarity on the perspective of local government. One area I'll mention is there is a move to expedite data center construction. Counties and local governments, we certainly are supportive of the economic development benefits that come with this data center construction and see the increased capacity for compute as important for a lot of this technology adoption. But the number one ask for us is to have robust local consultation. So throughout that process, being able to meet with the local governments in which a data center may be constructed, being able to establish a good partnership, and we want to remain at the table as it relates to local government. And then secondly, a concern that we have is any initiative that may seek to preempt state or local policymaking. So there is a directive that is calling on the FCC to look at any state level laws that may be in violation of the Telecommunications Act. And preemption is a topic where we always want to be mindful of local authorities. We have clear areas where counties and cities and local government can operate. There are clear areas where the federal government can operate, but our goal is to not be entirely preempted in the space, and this is no less important in the area of artificial intelligence as any other area. So it's one that we're monitoring closely. And just to stay in that preemption trend, I'll kind of close with a story, and then I'll pass it back to Rita. But earlier this year, as we were working through advocacy efforts for the reconciliation process in Congress. This was back in May and June. There was a provision included in the reconciliation bill that basically proposed a 10-year moratorium on all state and local AI policymaking. This was concerning on a few fronts. For one, compliance to this proposed moratorium. It was tied to whether or not a particular state would be able to access federal broadband funding. And this was a concern as we're looking to close the digital divide. We also were concerned about the broad approach of the moratorium. It was not clear if this would impact land use or zoning decisions, and we were looking to get more clarity in a compressed timeline. And most importantly, we want to have a seat at the table as we move forward in this broad realm of artificial intelligence. And so we've been actually working with our federal partners to establish guardrails that can help guide this technology's development going forward. So this story does have somewhat of a happy ending, if you will. So this provision, although it did pass the House, it was pulled out of the reconciliation bill in the Senate. And that vote was nearly unanimous. So it was a 99-to-1 vote. We were able to push off this moratorium from occurring. But this is an area especially where we want to reiterate that local governments are ready to be partners in this space. We want to collaborate with the federal government, and we look forward to continuing to do so. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Rita Reynolds, who's going to dive into some best practices that we've seen from our members in the world of artificial intelligence. So Rita, please.
All right, thank you, Seamus. And I want to thank all of you for having us here today. I'm going to spend some time talking about the AI toolkit, the AI compass is what we've called it, and how we were able to get there in a short amount of time. I start with spring of 2023 and awareness, but it actually started before that. In my role with NACO, I interact with county IT leaders across the United States, and we have a tech exchange. And literally overnight, the question started coming up. Have you tried ChatGPT? Did you see this? And then it just escalated from there of, oh my word, this is going to hit the ground running. It is faster than anything I've ever seen. And that went on for a few weeks. We started having conversations internally at NACO, as well as with some other members. And by the time we got to the spring of 2023, it was unanimous. We need to pull together a convening of county elected officials and as well as IT leaders to explore, to understand, and come away with a direction and guidance for our counties. And so from May of 2023 until July of 2024, yes, it was more than a year, we convened, we worked closely with a group of 16 elected officials, 2 county IT leaders, but also then work groups that were formed underneath that, which brought in the subject matter expertise in different areas. And I'll talk through those 4 areas in a little bit. At the end of, right at July, we came away with a toolkit and compass, as we call it. And I believe you all have that in your board packets as a soft copy. I have 2 hard copies with me if anyone wants to see me afterwards, but we also have some back in the office that we can share as well. And so from that point until this past summer, we've delivered the toolkit. Now what? And it wasn't a once and done event. We go back, one of the conversations I had with NACO staff was, go back to 2013 when we had cyber all of a sudden becoming extremely important, and we were leaders in that area working with counties. And then what? And cyber, of course, is here to stay. We still track it, but we wanted to make sure we were continuing to provide education. And so what we did from July 2024 and through this year are in-person AI regional forums, inviting local county staff, elected officials, county IT leaders, county department directors, spending a day and a half together going through what is artificial intelligence. I'm still finding understanding and use from here to here. As a matter of fact, I'll stop for a minute. How many of you have used ChatGPT in the past 3 days? Today, I know, right? No, I did not use it for this presentation. So it's very similar to when I used to ask the question years ago of how many of you have a cell phone? And now it's how many of you do not? And so that's what's happening with the understanding of artificial intelligence and Gen AI specifically. So these in-person regional forums are proving to be very beneficial, but we haven't stopped there. We're also now collecting use cases, and I'll talk to that in a few moments. The reality is, when you're from here to here, you're going to have 3,069 counties all at a different place when it comes to implementation. And it does start with education. So keeping education in mind, we went into the toolkit, a compass, as we call it, and focused on 4 areas. First area was policy development, not federal policy or federal legislation, but local policy. And we started with establishing, making sure you have policy and a framework on the use of generative AI. Let me just say, in talking with counties and working with counties for a long time, sometimes getting a new policy implemented could take a few months to 6 months to maybe even longer. And so the other piece of the recommendation is at least guidelines, putting out guidelines for your staff on how they should be using, if they're allowed to be using the generative AI tools. I will add here as well, early on, there were a lot of counties saying, we're just not going to allow it. How did that work out? Not too well, because staff are going to look at and use tools, even on their personal devices, if it's going to help them in performing their responsibilities. So guidelines are really important. Keeping in mind legal considerations, this goes back to your city or your county acceptable use policy, and knowing what you should be using the local government equipment for and what you shouldn't be, and knowing what your legal obligations are. I heard this morning, of course, about CJIS, Criminal Justice Information Sharing. Those are legal considerations that different departments have to be concerned with at local government. So reviewing that and making sure you're addressing that when it comes to the use of the AI tools. And then finally, procurement policies. Somewhere in the presentation this morning, I heard, no, actually it was with your board minutes about revisions to your procurement policy. It made me think of the fact that procurement policies need to have some check marks or checks and balances on how the solutions that you're incorporating and using within your organization are using AI. And again, back to who owns the data? You all do. Keeping that in mind as it pertains to the use of AI. So work group number 1. Here's a sample from Santa Cruz County, California, that we have a number of other policy samples that counties have put together. It's not a large amount yet. They're at different places when it comes to the policy. More and more are definitely putting guidelines in place. First, to ensure that they are at least addressing the use of AI, and specifically generative AI. But wanted to share that with you as well as part of our toolkit. So the second work group was on ethics. And ethics has been around forever, for sure. It's first very much in the forefront when it comes to what goes into the large language model and what comes out of the large language model, and how you are utilizing it in your day-to-day work and the solutions. So keeping fairness, equitableness, and impartiality in mind. It's really important to note that we have what we call bias in the data. That was mentioned this morning, but you also have bias in the human review. And reminding staff and educating staff on both those different types of biases and how best to approach and use the results of the tools that you're using when it comes to generative AI, so that you can limit as much as possible what I would call the bias, as well as the inequality. Being transparent, I go back to the example here last year where a university had a situation on campus, and it was pretty severe, but no one was hurt. The president of the university put out an email to everyone saying everything is fine. We did not have any casualties. And at the very end, it said, written by ChatGPT. That did not go over well at all, and nor should it have. And so, keeping in mind that if you are using the tools to more than just a little, like for review of grammar, then you do need to be transparent about it. Last year I wrote an article for Cyber Awareness Month, which is October, and I used ChatGPT to write a scenario. And I said that right at the beginning, because the scenario was actually pretty good. So why should I have to recreate something? This is already anonymized, and I have to worry about mentioning a county name or anything like that. So being transparent. Of course, privacy, we know security comes with that. The privacy is the same here as it is in other areas and other tools that are used in your organization. And so keeping in mind confidential information should never go into a non-used or non-owned organization large language model. So you can create your own, and you may want to be able to use it in some fashion with like your human resources or personnel, but limiting what you're putting into those more open, like ChatGPT and some of the other tools that are out there, because it could become public information. And this is especially true, not just with HR, but also with areas like human services, case notes, even on the criminal justice side. So privacy, of course, was very important under our ethics group. And there's more detail for each of these areas. And then finally, accountability. Do you know how many or who and for what purpose staff in your city or your county are using the generative AI tools today? How many of you can say, yes, I know? There'll be a few of you, I know, because we've had that conversation, but it's a good question to go back and ask specifically your county IT staff person or your CIO. You might be surprised what you find out. All right, the third work group is applications in action. So this has to do with the actual applications that you may be utilizing. Either your staff has created them, or it's a software solution that now has AI, generative AI built into it. Just keep in mind, what are the use cases that we know we can implement fairly easily and with low risk? I'll talk about low risk in a minute in more depth. But also the other piece I'll highlight here is data governance. I don't have enough time in the day to talk about how important data governance is, but even more so now than ever before, oversight of your data that's in your systems, but also in your documents, having policies and procedures in place, because the AI is going to read all of it. If you don't have certain protocols around what that AI can access. All right, and here's the risk-based approach. European guidance is pretty good on this, keeping in mind what's low risk. Press releases are what I would call low risk. Writing an article, right? Okay, you all do speeches, right? So you've got a draft of a speech, or maybe you have an assistant that does it. It's okay to run it through the generative AI tool. What else did I miss? What else should I be saying about this particular topic? And so that's low risk generally. High risk are going to be things like mental health evaluations. Not out of the realm, but it is high risk. And so you have to look at and put much more guidance around the high risk use cases. And then finally, workforce. You used this quote today, I think it was you. AI is not going to replace humans, but humans with AI are going to replace humans without AI. And I'm going to go out on a limb here. I said that for a long time, and now I'm starting to add the word yet. And I say that because we're seeing it in manufacturing. I have a son-in-law that works, is a plant supervisor. They have purchased $100,000 pallet movers, AI powered. They're replacing 3 jobs each. And so it's coming in certain areas. That doesn't mean we should be afraid or worried about it in the negative way, but how do we look at the positions that you have in your county, and how do you upskill and reskill staff that are there? Now is the time to act on that, not 2 to 3 years from now. All right, let's cover some challenges and benefits at a high level. We've talked about quite a few of the challenges, security and privacy. I didn't mention copyright issues. It's not just text. So I do a lot of training with how to use Gen AI tools for video, for music. The music one is where the copyright piece came into play. And it's great to create songs. I'm not a songwriter at all. But can I use the tools that are out there to create some catchy little tunes? Absolutely. Am I going to ask for it to be in the voice of Taylor Swift? No. So, keeping in mind that there are copyright issues, I think as we go along here in the next few years, it'll even itself out, no different than when music was, this will tell everyone how old we are, but, we had the 8-track tapes. Anyone remember those? So you move into the digital world, the world adopted and moved with the changes. We'll see that with copyright issues. I can't say when. Talked about bias and ethical issues, and I talked about training county staff, but also managing change and trust. We heard trust over and over again today with our constituents, but keep in mind change with your staff as well. It is change in how some of the jobs and responsibilities are being done today, but are going to be done moving forward. And so it comes to that balance of, we don't want to be left behind. We want to be efficient with our resources, but we also want to make sure that you understand the implications and we work together. On the benefit side, general productivity, if you haven't used it to write an email, I would encourage you to do that. I put a thing out on the Tech Exchange last week or 2 weeks ago. I said, what's your favorite prompt? And one person came back with rewriting the email to staff that I knew was a little harsh and I needed to be a little nicer and more empathetic. Nothing wrong with that. But make sure the human is still in the loop and you're reading what the result is to make sure it's still in your words and the way you would be presenting something. So general productivity for sure. I mentioned about social services. I'm hearing a lot across the counties in certain areas on how they're starting to use the scribe tools even within social services. I know, having watched caseworkers over the years spend tremendous amount of time doing documentation, taking work home with them, or staying in the office. And now there are tools that can help facilitate that. Again, you'll hear me say, keep the human in the loop. And finally, I'll just talk about engaging with the community stakeholders. Bring in, form a work group, have an AI committee, but look at including some community organization representatives and or just, not just, but citizens or residents of the county or the city to be a part of that. We've got business folks out there that would love to be able to sit at the table. We've got community leaders, whether it's food pantries or other nonprofits that want to be a part of this conversation. The more you work together, the further you're going to get. All right, I'm going to end with our most recent resource, and we call it AI in Motion. We have started collecting use cases that counties are actually doing today when it comes to AI and generative AI. The categories that we put them into were operations, public service, emergency resource planning, education and population planning, and of course, cybersecurity and data privacy. A number of the areas are simple as creating what I would call tabletop simulations for emergency management. We pay a lot of money to do that to outside organizations. Some of that you can now do in-house. Same thing with your tourism. If you have a tourism department and maybe they're paying for a contract to develop videos, that can be done in-house now to near the same quality. And I was up in New York doing a presentation. The sheriff's department was there and was not interested at first. However, as they talked through, we went through the day and did some demonstrations and ideating, he realized we're always recruiting volunteers or looking to encourage the youth to join or to start focusing on criminal justice education. We could create videos. We could actually take this to a new level. And so it's the recognition of how does this apply in my world and what I do that's starting to take hold. And we're really working to keep those use cases alive and adding to it each day. And finally, I would be remiss if I didn't say, clean up the data. Someone at the national level said, and they was talking about, anyone here from the state? Was that the state executive and said, if we didn't have bad data, we wouldn't have any data at all. Like, sure, I agree with that. I think we have some good data out there. However, as we start implementing, and counties are doing this, chatbots, AI-driven, generative AI chatbots that are off of your website, it is finding old data, inaccurate data, fees and things that were like 20 years ago. So some counties have had to pull back and have said, we've got to look at our data and we've really got to clean it up. Data governance isn't just about the quality. So if you want to learn more, this, like I said, I started to say Google, but ask ChatGPT what data governance means, or Copilot. So I will stop there and see if there's any questions. Here, Joe.
Okay, let me say thank you very much for the presentation very quickly, and just appreciate the focus and the importance of looking at data governance and really security, and then this engagement with the community stakeholders. I think that's so critical. As I'm sitting here, though, I'm thinking about, in my own community, we're going to do an event on Saturday. It's going to be a expungement clinic. And so we're going to have representatives from the legal profession. We're going to have the Commonwealth Attorney. We're going to have the clerk to the courts. We have a whole bunch of people coming to support roughly 100 residents who want to have inaccuracies on their criminal record removed. And as I'm thinking about this is a perfect case for AI. I mean, I guess the question is, we'll have to figure out, the process for that. But clearly, the way that we do it today requires all of this manpower and these forms and these legal requirements. But I think we're going to have to look at this as a way to help a lot more people, because the scaling of it is going to be extremely hard if we have to host these events one after the other across the entire county. So I'm just acknowledging that even today, as I'm sitting here thinking about an event we're going to do on Saturday, there's an opportunity to kind of pivot it towards AI. So just appreciate all the discussion points here, the conversation earlier, and you can see the thread that so many things can be pulled through and included in this AI discussion. But let me see questions. Let me start on the right-hand side, since I started on the left last time. So any folks on the right side that have any questions? Okay, it looks like you do not. So now I will look to the left. Okay, I'm going to go first with Chair Jefferson, since she didn't ask before.
This is just so hard to do, especially when we have a late night meeting. First of all, I want to go back to some stuff that you were saying, Seamus, because I'm Prince William County Chair DeShandra Jefferson right now. I have Loudoun County sitting on my right hand, and we are really dealing with the data center issue. And actually, Prince William County just voted down a data center yesterday. I really want to go back to what you were saying about making sure there's local input into data centers. I actually want to expand on that. I want to preserve and enhance local control over data center construction, because that's a real issue here. And in Virginia, we're a Dillon Rule state. Data centers are taking a lot of energy and meeting their requirements. I cannot say no to a data center solely based on energy, even though that's a real concern. And as the congressman was saying, he spoke to one of my colleagues. In some places, Dominion has a long delay when they can actually power. So I'm really encouraging, as we have these discussions, local control needs to be at the center of it, because we know our communities better than anyone else. And I am very worried about, a lot of things that the White House has proposed around, data center construction and AI development. But I really want to think, people to really think about that. We need to be at the center of that conversation, because it's our communities and we know it better than everyone. And we're the ones who are going to be taking the hits. So thank you.
Absolutely. And just to quickly respond, I think that has been our #1 ask to federal partners, that local choice and consultation needs to be the #1 priority. Your county is not the only county that is dealing with this very much in the present moment, where there's pushback in the community and representatives want to voice those concerns, but it almost feels like a sliding shift of power where the process is just moving forward. So we want to be at the table, and I appreciate that feedback.
Chair Taconis.
Thank you. That was all very insightful. I really feel that I have to go back to the recording and dissect. I have one question. I used to use it as a joke, and it's not a joke anymore. I was used to interact with constituents and say, okay, your AI will FOIA my AI, and we'll see what's come out. So I'm really concerned about AI being implemented we have to begin to think how this will align with FOIA requirements and public transparency and actual democracy. We have a lot of requests for OpenGov, for open data, for everything. They have to be now formatted in a way that somebody's automated system can crawl through these, and we see a significant tension field of how to respond to that. So I don't know, I'm asking for your take.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned about FOIA requests. Let's say the good and the bad. So in terms of being able to respond to FOIA requests, there is a positive piece with the use of artificial intelligence and generative AI. And you're hearing the term agentic AI, how to, parse together different steps that are all generatively driven. And the reality is you still need a human in the loop within the government organization to review. I hate to say the bad side, but I watch and over the years have heard a number of counties saying, did you get this request? Did you get this request? Someone's just, firing off all these letters. Well, now with generative AI, it's a whole lot faster and a whole lot easier to send to a whole lot more people. And so it's knowing what are the legitimate requests, and still you have to respond and you still have to follow the state and county guidelines when it comes to addressing those. We don't have all the answers yet, but it's awareness and education of your staff that are handling those requests. And I will tell you, there's the tools out there that assist with FOIA requests are starting to respond. And so your software solution you may already own or use may already have some safeguards in there, both from the helping facilitate the answers and the process, but also let's say uncovering, but addressing ones that maybe should not go all the way through. And that's where you have to consult with your legal as well. No different than the past, it's just faster.
Okay, and then last, Councilman Snyder.
Thank you very much. Our region hosts literally the world center for data centers, and we have some of the best universities and the best thinkers in the world. What's your suggestion about what our region ought to do as a region beyond today where we're sharing information? Do you have some recommendations about what we can do as a region, because our people live and work from one jurisdiction to another on a daily basis? We really are a region. This is, of course, regional, national, international. But what do you suggest as a region? Any ideas there?
I think we both have different responses to that. From my perspective, from the day-to-day utilization of the Gen AI tools and artificial intelligence and the growth, partnerships are critical. And working closely with, we'll use universities as an example, working with them in terms of the curriculum that they are offering. We have to remember that those coming out of college, out of universities, they need to have these skills, because I can tell you almost every job application that we're seeing now or a job description has a line about, do you know how to use AI? And so working closely with the universities about what you see as your needs is very important. And also encouraging the universities to have classes around AI and ethics and transparency as well. So I will respond to it that way, like I said, with universities, but also with your corporate partners. The contracts that you have now with Salesforce, Microsoft, I don't want to leave anyone out, so Amazon Web Services, Google, there are a concerted effort to want to work with local government. And it's important for you to reach out and say, what are you doing specifically? What are your terms and conditions now? Have they changed? And so partnering and working together and also sharing, hey, we want to work on this use case, but we need your help. So that I'm not ignoring the data center piece, because data centers are needed and they're not going to go away and they're going to become more prolific, but they're definitely concerned. So Seamus,
Yeah, I think my answer is very similar. I think this is a space where, you know, the more leadership and exchange of ideas that we can have across the nation's network of local governments is going to be incredibly helpful, because I think in a lot of cases, artificial intelligence as a technology for counties or cities to adopt, or if you're seeing new projects come to the community and you're not too familiar, we've been leaning on some partners at the county level who are experienced in this field, looking at our Loudoun counties and our Frederick counties and so many different counties that are leading work in this space to help share with our other peers in the county network that may be on the other side of the country, or it's a rural county and they're trying to understand this topic. So your leadership here would be appropriate.
I will add one more thing about the regional collaboration as it pertains to cyber and AI. We know there's some definite concerns across the United States about cyber funding and the reauthorization maybe of the state and local cyber grant program, but regionally working together when it comes to security operations centers and bring your resources to the table as a region, and the cyber defenses will go up. Doesn't mean that attacks are going to go away, but when you're working together, especially around cyber, then you have an established relationship with those in your region. And when something does happen, then you're better able to respond in the right way and in a collaborative way.
Excellent. Let's hear it for Rita Reynolds and Seamus Dowdle from National Association of Counties. Fantastic. Wanted to share a couple of statistics with you before we bring up Chuck Wemple. AI policy in action. Just last year, lawmakers introduced 150 plus AI bills nationwide, and 30 states issued AI policy or guidance. And so the playbook is out there. The goal, especially with this type of meeting, is to create a comprehensive, collaborative approach to AI implementation across the region. And we've heard about tools and frameworks, but how does that play out when an entire region takes on AI policy? The Houston-Galveston Area Council has built and implemented a policy that other regions are now looking at as a model. So Executive Director Chuck Wemple is here to share that experience and what his team has learned. Let's hear it for Executive Director Chuck Wemple.
Mr. Chair, board members, Executive Director Mercer, thank you very much for the invitation to be here today. I'm Chuck Wemple. I'm the Executive Director of the Houston-Galveston Area Council of Governments. The Houston-Galveston Area Council is more than Houston and Galveston, just to let you know. It's 13 counties, about 120 cities on the upper Texas coast, about 12,500 square miles, about 8 million people, mixture of urban, rural, and suburban. And we started our exploration of artificial intelligence roughly about a year and a half ago, when I had the chance to take a webinar series from a group called the Institute for the Future. They had this course called 3 Horizons of Artificial Intelligence, and it walks you through, over the course of 3 weeks and 2-hour sessions, all these different ways of approaching artificial intelligence, generative artificial intelligence, especially scenario development, how you can use it as a productivity tool. And I came out of that really excited, and I gathered my leadership team that works at the Council of Governments. I said, wow, this stuff is really cool. There's all these tools out there. We need to get a policy in place so folks can start using these tools and have some guidance. And I was looking around the room and I'm like, oh, you're already using it. And it's like, yes, we are. Unfortunately, we've been using it for a while. And I'm like, well, how are we using it? And then I'm finding out things like, oh, so-and-so used it to draft a letter to the county executive. I'm like, oh, wow, really? Okay. It would have been nice if I could have seen that maybe first. And we're using it for these different ways of getting our work done and being more productive and taking notes in meetings. And I'm like, what systems are you using? And they're like, well, we're using our own. I'm like, well, that's going to be a problem. Because you need to have some kind of sanction models that are out there. And so we gathered the board, and I talked to the board about what we can do with artificial intelligence, showed them some examples I had from that workshop. They got excited about it, and then we decided we're going to go ahead and do an artificial intelligence initiative for our agency. Turned it over to our data services person, our chief innovation officer, and he gathered some folks together, and they came back with what was a very traditional approach, which didn't really meet, in my opinion, what I wanted to have us do. It was very top down. It was very focused, small step at a time. We're going to have a governance committee of only a few people, and only a few people are going to get to use artificial intelligence tools, and we're going to tell them which tool it is and how they can use it. And I'm like, well, people are already using this, right? And they're like, yeah. I'm like, well, let's figure out a way where everyone can find a way to use these tools, and really have it be truly inclusive across our entire agency, which is my approach. I am a firm believer that the true transformation in a council of governments from artificial intelligence is going to come from the entire staff being familiar and comfortable and knowing how to use these tools so they can start to make their jobs more creative and more efficient and effective and explore new ways of public service. So we ventured along that. So we shifted radically the approach and the messaging from a bit more of a controlled top down to everyone is going to be involved. And I messaged this in a few different ways. We did the official executive director's memo that comes out to everybody that we're going to embrace artificial intelligence. You're all going to have access. We're not going to hide from it. We're going to find ways to use it responsibly and safely. And then in a staff meeting, let folks know verbally about it as well too. And I wanted to introduce a sense of play. The chair and I were talking about the importance of play and having a bit of fun. And I said, you know, these are really powerful tools. I've heard folks kind of say it's kind of like playing with fire, and you're about to give a book of matches to everybody and hope the house doesn't burn down, right? And I thought, well, that's a little on the darker side. And I thought, you know, when I was a young person, when you learn how to drive a car, you got taken to a big parking lot, right? And you go into this big parking lot, and you got in a car, and you figured out how to shift the gears if it was a manual, or at least get out and move around, and you figured out how to kind of maneuver that car before you got on the road and could maybe get into some trouble. And so that was the message. We're going to create this AI parking lot where everyone's going to get to kind of experience these tools. And then along the way, this is an important thing to understand, along the way there was still kind of an internal push to, well, first we need to figure out what the one AI tool is going to be. And I'm like, let's pick a few, let's pick a few and try them out. Let's have multiple cars in the parking lot that folks can try. And so we settled on 3 different tools, and we established our parking lot. And then also something that I do at the agency to kind of humanize things is we do these kind of goofy videos. Clark's seen a few of them. There's a link he can provide you if you want to see it later. And it's about the AI parking lot. And I'm out there in a safety vest and sunglasses, and we're like, welcome to the AI parking lot. We're in our parking lot at work. We've got a volunteer coming up, and he's kind of bumping into these AI signs and having fun, just kind of being a little goofy with it. And it kind of relaxed people a bit. And then we decided to go ahead and have some staff trainings after that as well too. We announced it all, we rolled it out. We had the team get together. We're going to do these series of trainings, get to come to the conference room. We're going to have the AI tools ready. Bring your laptop. Here we go. And we're in the parking lot, and we're ready to go. And it's like, okay, go to the platform we have, because we put these guardrails on this system so it's nice and safe. Don't use the one on your phone. Use the one on your laptop. Go here, do this. And then we found out that not everyone's computer was updated properly. So we spent the next half hour of that meeting going through the tech issues. I can't log in. Got to reset your password. So you log in, password 2025 exclamation point. Right. Change it. Add the exclamation point to it. So we worked through all those issues. So that was important for us to understand that these tools are going to require everyone kind of have the same stuff, right, and the same thing going. And some folks were really nervous about these tools and this whole idea of artificial intelligence, which is why we wanted them to relax a little bit and have a little bit of fun in the parking lot. Some of them had never used it. Some of them thought for sure they were going to be replaced by this. They don't know, are they going to get in trouble for using this the wrong way? They just weren't familiar with it and didn't know. And then we had others on the opposite end of the spectrum that were advanced users who were saying, these cars aren't fast enough, for us. We need better tools. And so we figured out a way to kind of meet both needs along the way. So we went through all the training, got people going, and spent time in the parking lot. Next slide, please.
Oh, you have.
Well, I have it, sorry. Sure, I'll help you out with that, Chuck. Here we go. So here's our roadmap. So The phase one was the intro to AI, the parking lot that happened in May of this year. And the message was, you're going to have a month to just play with this. I'll get into some of the details what that play looked like in a minute. And then in June, we're going to start really having you figure out how to use this for your work. How can we make our work a little better? And then we're looking at internal chatbots around the end of this year, and then document optimization and external chatbots. I'm a little scared about that one, to be honest, because there's so many stories of that going bad. And then data prediction, really getting into these really powerful tools. We're going to take, another year or so to kind of get where we need to be, year and a half. To get there. Right now, we're working on the internal chatbots. It's going to be strictly internal for the team. It's going to be stuff like, rather than HR getting a bunch of calls, do we get Valentine's Day off or not? No, you don't. But, you might be able to go in and do a quick thing in the chatbot, right? And be able to kind of look at our policies and how we do procurement and all of this, and have these different tools that are there. Internal chatbots, I think, are a great place to start because you can safely work it. The risk is a lot lower. McDonald's has a fantastic internal chatbot. It's called Ask Pickles. And when you ask Pickles questions, you can ask it like, Pickles, remind me how I'm supposed to clean out the milkshake machine. And then Pickles gives you this whole stuff. You have to go to your boss and say, how do I clean the milkshake machine out, right? So all these basic things are there. Pickles doesn't tell you how to make sure that you properly prepare your financials for an audit or anything like that, right? So, we're going to start with the milkshake machine and work our way up to the bigger stuff as we go forward. So chatbots are currently in development, and we'll go from there. I have some success stories that we'll get to, but there was some really interesting things along the way. It was really important to make sure that everyone knew that the message was coming from the top of the organization, that it was okay to use this stuff, that we're going to have a little bit of fun, and that we're going to help you figure out ways to use it, but a lot of it rests on you, the individual, as to really how to make it effective. So we had some fun along the way, and we had some surprises come up too, and I've got the surprises on these little pieces of paper that are here. Magicians use these as mentalism types thing. We aren't going to do that. I am a magician, but we're not going to manipulate these, just to let you know. But we're going to have a little bit of fun. So let's see. This way folks at home can hear. So Jessica, your task is really simple. Reach in here. I'm not going to force it. You get to pick it. Total choice of yours. Reach in, just grab a piece of paper, hold out, don't open it up until we call on you. Sound good? Okay. You sure you want that one? Okay. Just kidding. Okay, great. Thank you, Jessica. Let's come to Brian. Now, I'm probably making a mistake, but let's go ahead, Brian. Yeah. You got me. Nope, got two. Okay, got one. Okay, great. Hold on to it. And then Kayla's helping keep track of who's doing the work. Officer, come over here. I don't think balls. I don't know. One left. One left. Okay, the other way back here, everybody else. Great, so. On your billet is hopefully something interesting and humorous that we found out along the way that I will then expand upon. This has been truly randomized. It was not forced, free choice. We're going to take them in the order selected, and we'll kind of popcorn around a little bit as a result. Keeps me on my toes as a presenter. Kayla, who was first? Jessica, what's on your piece of paper?
Boil vinegar.
Boil vinegar. So, my own story with being careful with AI. We had our house repainted. My wife was working a late shift. I felt so good about the house being repainted. Wood replaced on our bungalow. I had a big pot of vegan chili. Trust me, it tastes really good. On the stove. And normally I maintain that really well. I thought, I feel so good. I'm going to go out back and spend a little time in the backyard. I'll be back in and check that chili in a little bit. And I went out in the backyard. Such a nice time. I got distracted. And I'm like, oh, I should probably go in and check that chili. I get to the back door and I'm like, that doesn't smell real good. And so I throw the door open and the smoke detector didn't go off. And there's all this smoke in the house because the chili didn't catch on fire, but it was really black. It was really crusty and black and lots of smoke coming out. And I'm like, oh no. So I run over and I throw the fan on and I go to the window and the painters had painted the windows shut so I can't open the windows. And I'm trying to get the doors open. I've got these dogs and cats running around me. And I'm like, my wife's gonna be home in like 5 hours. I go pick up my phone and I go, how do I quickly get rid of food smoke, in my house? And it says boil vinegar. I'm like, cool. So I get this big old industrial sized pan, put a bunch of hot white vinegar in there. I'm boiling the vinegar. It's all going. And we're standing in the house and my dog's looking at me and they're like, and they're sneezing and having a hard time breathing. And my cat's doing the same thing. And I'm getting kind of irritated. And I'm like, I don't think this is really good for us. So we go outside and and this is the AI mode of Google, right? And I'm like, it says, the first thing you can do is you can boil vinegar. It'll take care of the problem. And I search it again. And the next time, and this is what's fascinating about AI, is you get a different result sometimes, right? And the second result was in capitals, do not boil vinegar. Right? Boiling vinegar creates a certain type of gas that will give you pulmonary edema. So I'm like searching, what are the symptoms of pulmonary edema? On this, right? So I turn the stove off, we get going, and long story short, I just did my usual stuff. I kind of confessed, I'm not gonna be able to hide this one, so hey, baby, here's what happened. And we kind of moved on from there. So it's only as good as the search you do, and don't trust the first result was the big lesson there. AI can not only be kind of ridiculous, it can be dangerous if you're not careful with it. Who was next, Caleb?
The attorneys are here.
The attorneys are here. That was a fun one. The attorneys are here and they want to have all records, electronic and otherwise, of a certain transportation project that we're working on at the Houston Galveston Area Council. So we go through our usual approach and we gather all the emails and we get the voicemails and we get all the documents. And then it's like, is there anything else? And then a couple folks in the transportation department said, well, I've been using, Otter AI in some of the meetings and taking notes and summarizing that. And I use ChatGPT on some of this. And I'm like, great. Where is it? Is it on our system? Well, no, I was using my own on my phone and on my own computer. And it's like, okay, that's a problem. And then, so how do we get to those? Well, I canceled the one subscription, so I don't have access to the data anymore. And I'm like, okay, this is really not good, right? So there's public information requests, the attorneys come in for discovery. Super important that this parking lot and this playground, this platform is that we only use those tools and not your own, because one person that left the agency didn't know how to get a hold of them. And we eventually worked through it, but it was very, very awkward and could have been much worse depending on the circumstances. Who's next?
Name your pet turtle.
Name your pet turtle. That was
He's
part of
my
the fun.
friend.
In the AI parking lot. So it wasn't like, okay, Sally, you're the administrative assistant of the workforce group. Use AI right now to figure out how to make your job better. It was like, hey, here's some prompts. So you might have a little bit of fun with this new tool you know nothing about. Figure out a name for your pet turtle for your 5-year-old granddaughter. And it's like, really? And it's like, yeah, just try it and work in pairs. And then you add in that that the granddaughter likes race cars. And then you look at the results that come out and you keep playing with it. And all of a sudden they're giggling and they're having some fun and they're playing with this tool and then they're doing other stuff besides naming their pet turtle as part of that as well too. And people got to share and have a little bit of fun. So it may sound silly, but it really helped people all of a sudden have a little bit of fun with these powerful tools. Who's next?
Albert, not his real name.
Yes, Albert, not his real name. So as we put guardrails on the system for the parking lot, I'm like, we gotta make this thing really safe. Make it closed. We want folks to have a safe environment. We don't want them getting hold of anything dangerous. We don't want them compromising anything. The rule also in the parking lot was you couldn't take actual data of our council of governments and feed that into the system. You gotta just play with it and figure it out first. So we closed it so it wasn't getting out to the internet. And it's like, we gotta put guardrails on this thing, right? We gotta make sure it's safe. We gotta make sure it only accesses certain things and make sure folks can't think that they're being, funny when they might do something that might not be appropriate for the workplace. And they're like, oh, that's not going to happen. And I'm like, really? Oh, it's not going to happen. I'm like, what about Albert? And they're like, oh yeah, okay. maybe we should, with Albert's sense of humor, make sure we have these guardrails on there. So we had to really be careful that someone didn't think that they were being funny and maybe creating something that could be embarrassing or inappropriate out there. It sounds like a small thing, but it's a really big thing from an HR perspective, and otherwise, we don't want to provide the tools that could all of a sudden get us in trouble. Who's after that? Mayor.
Big, beautiful bill.
Big, beautiful bill. Is that really what's on there?
Big, beautiful.
Okay, it is. Big, beautiful bill. Okay, so another example that we had at the Houston Galveston Area Council, as probably like all of you, legislation passes. What does this mean for our Council of Governments? What does this mean for our programs? A lot of folks really uptight, really stressed about what's going there. And here's this big piece of legislation, and people want answers right away, right? And so our normal process of sifting through and going through isn't going to satisfy the needs of our members and our own team. And so I'm like, we're going to use our AI tools to analyze the big, beautiful bill and our programs. And while we're getting this ready, one of my directors comes in, and she's got all the alarms going, and she's notified one of our ancillary boards about, oh, the sky is falling and everything is incredibly horrible, and here's what's going on. And I'm like, really? Where'd you get that? She's like, well, I went on my phone and I used ChatGPT. I'm like, so you didn't go to ours? No, I did my own. And I'm like, well, hold on a second. We're gonna do another analysis. I'm like, so just kind of cool off a little bit on this. And so what we fed into this system, we were very intentional. We fed in the legislation that passed, super important, not the draft, not stuff from other websites, but the actual legislation that passed. And then we fed our audit result, our certified financial report, and our audit results, which lists all the different funding streams and programs that we have. And we said, compare these and see where the analysis is. And we came out with a very different picture, still have some concerns, but it was much more easier to digest and communicate and have confidence in. And when we went back to the person who was waving the phone and having a lot of problems, we're like, let's deconstruct that. And we found out that she used ChatGPT, and it was grabbing stuff from everywhere, not just draft legislation, but advocacy websites and everything else. And it also only had a certain amount of data available up to a certain date, so it didn't actually include the past legislation. So this person was already making decisions and out there when we had to take a little more measured approach. So now we have a system in place where we can feed any future legislation in, any rulemaking that comes out, and use that same approach so we can understand our impacts. Who's next?
Yep.
Yes.
A trip to New York City.
A trip to New York City. This is not a prize. This is a little piece of paper with a trip to New York City. Also, part of that parking lot experience that I mentioned was, again, rather than put it into your work right away, you're going to New York City, have AI help you plan a trip for 3 days, and you have a certain amount of money, and have it plan a trip for you. And so the person did that, and people love that. It's like, I want to play with this a bit, start doing their own trips. They go through, and the person who did it shared the results. And it's like, wow, here's all this stuff. And it gave them some really good suggestions, right, as to how to do their trip. And then it's like, well, let's dig in a little deeper. Don't just use this kind of as a search engine or a simple prompt. Go a little deeper. And the person's like, you know what? I'm 7 months pregnant. So she went in and she says, by the way, I'm 7 months pregnant. Can you give me some recommendations? And then it changed things. It said, oh, you may have difficulty walking, you may not want to walk as far, all of this. And all of a sudden it had this new version of that trip with a little more information and context. So we use that as a way, the New York trip to New York as a way to then, if you're going to use this, don't just do one search and be done. Do a search, interrogate the results, dig in a little deeper, be really thoughtful as to where you're going. Who's next?
Deck of cards.
Deck of cards. One thing that we've encountered with artificial intelligence activities, we've had a number of successes, and I'll wrap up with those in just a minute when we're done with this. We're still doing okay so far on time? Okay, good. So one thing that we did at the Houston Galveston Area Council, did not include AI, and was very much grassroots, just like this initiative for the parking lot and our AI initiative and getting folks ready, is we established core values at the Houston Galveston Area Council for the first time. I've been at the agency for just under 25 years. I've been executive director for 7. And we didn't really have any core values. And folks always say, what about the mission and the vision? I'm like, yeah, we're going to work on that. But first, maybe we should understand who we are and what we stand for. right? What should we be known for? So we had this big, massive group. Everybody in the agency was involved. We had a bunch of meetings to get together. They broke out in focus groups. What should we stand for? And they came out with some core values. And the only thing I said was, maybe you should do 5. And they said, no, we need 7. And I'm like, 7's a lot to remember. And they're like, no, maybe we should do 5. No, let's do 7. They ended up with 7. And it's their/our core values. And we've been trying to figure out a way to work these in to what we do a bit. And I had the idea, since I do magic tricks and card tricks, I'm known for that around the office. It's a great captive audience if you want to know. Let's make some playing cards up. And so we did playing cards with our core values on them. And they're all listed, and the words and the text is us. It's not 1 or 2 people. This is us. And we have these now, so folks, if you want to set your intention for the day, you can pick accountability might be the intention for the day, or you're having a team meeting. What are you going to really focus on with our core values today? And you might end up with innovation is one of them. Is there? What does that mean? Where do we go from there? What are we going to focus on next month? And so we just launched this, and I'm like, you know what? Let's also add an AI angle. How can artificial intelligence help us really put an emphasis on our core value of community, that we're stronger together and that we include everybody? How can artificial intelligence help us achieve that core value, integrity on the safety and security of it as well too, and how we use it? So the deck of cards idea is linking into the artificial intelligence, although they're very separate. We're combining them through artificial intelligence. And so far it's working really well. Folks coming up with new ideas other than just feeling like they have to grind away and have it be part of their work. Who's next?
I think I'm the last one. And I think we're going back to,
Actually, I think yeah, you and then one more. Yep. So yes.
okay. I think we're going back to the chili. Bigfoot and the AI vegans.
Bigfoot and the AI vegans. They're at the Library of Congress tonight at 7 o'clock, playing in the lobby. So Bigfoot and the AI vegans, something we didn't expect. There's a little bit of resistance, surprisingly, that comes out to using some of these tools that is something other than lack of familiarity or fear of being replaced. Some folks just don't want to use it. And some folks are legitimately concerned about the environmental impact of artificial intelligence. And we're in an all-team meeting and we're talking about it. It's town hall style. And someone says, how are we going to track the environmental impact of our use of artificial intelligence? And so I didn't expect that to come out. And I'm like, wow. I didn't say this out loud, but I'm like, wow, the person asking this, they've got a really big carbon footprint of their own, that they have, right? And so are they thinking about artificial intelligence, or are they thinking about something else and kind of this big footprint approach? And then I heard the term, I'm an AI vegan, not I am, but someone said, I'm an AI vegan. I'm like, what is that? And they're like, oh, well, I'm not going to use artificial intelligence at all. I'm going to be a vegan, an AI vegan, so because I don't want to have the environmental impact. I'm worried about its impact on creativity. And all of a sudden we have this whole new lens to be thinking about things through. How do we address that? I didn't say this, but I said, the YouTube video usage I kind of see around the office is probably more than our AI impact right now, on the streaming, some of our team, out there. But I took it very seriously. And what we're doing is, we heard earlier when the congressman talked about 50 milliliters of water, I think it was, for a search. If you do photography from scratch, then you've cooked breakfast, energy-wise. If you do a video, like a 2-minute video, you've cooked dinner for a week, right, energy-wise. And so we're not doing the video stuff right now. Don't really have a need for it. We have other ways of doing that. So we're limiting, in a way, until we get really underway and figure this out, we're limiting how we're going to use AI so we can at least address that without having it be too convenient of a reason not to do it at all. One more.
Synthetic chuck.
Synthetic chuck. I want a synthetic chuck. I really do. So who said me too? Okay, so synthetic Rita. Yeah, so synthetic chuck, this concept of voice cloning, which you heard about earlier in the day. It's amazing. If you go to 11 labs, the number 11 labs, there's an amazing voice cloning stuff. It's really cheap, scary good, and scary convincing. And you can have like a digital avatar that can be in a meeting, and I would never send Synthetic Chuck to this group, just to let you know. And I wouldn't really be doing it for a meeting either. But in those moments where people hear things differently and learn differently, we have an emergency communication that has to go out. It might be helpful to have it come in my voice at 3 in the morning about that the office is closed due to a hurricane or whatever it might be. Could be a good way to go on that. And Synthetic Chuck could be a way to get some communication and some messaging out there that we're exploring with. When I first mentioned Synthetic Chuck to my board of directors, much like all of you, they said, how expensive is Synthetic Chuck? Is he cheaper than you? And I said, someone's got to program him, someone's got to tell him what to say. But, so part of that replacement thing. So Synthetic Chuck, but that's out there, and it's something that we've also been very careful of. In all seriousness, we're not going to create fake personas to represent our agency. We're not going to create fake personas to market our programs, even though these tools are available out there. But Synthetic Chuck has some appeal, like Rita was thinking back there too. So that completes the little randomized audience participation portion of this. I think I'd wrap up by giving you just a couple of real quick case studies, if I could, Joe Paul, if I got time. And then open up to any questions you have. So here's some examples of how we've actually used artificial intelligence across the agency at different levels. One thing that we have grappled with for years is really getting our meeting minutes properly transcribed and properly ready after a board meeting like you all are having today. It's always been a bit of a struggle. Someone listening back in the day, I think Rita mentioned 8-track tapes. We had cassettes and old, listening with the headphones on and people transcribing, and we tried voice to text recognition, and that really didn't give us what we needed to. So we're kind of back to someone listening and manually writing it. And we started to use an AI tool that transcribes our monthly board meetings and drafts the meetings in seconds. And it's scary good. It listens to the recording and it captures. We do a roll call in the beginning, and then it has really good accuracy on who made that motion, who made the second, who made the comment on this. And so it allows it to get into a rough draft state. And then there's an editing log if there's any kind of edits made to it. And then our team goes back and then they spend their time kind of going through and scrubbing and making sure some things are right and making sure if something doesn't make sense, then they make sure they follow up with all that. But it's taken something that's taken a lot of time in the past and something that's more accurate and more responsive. But we make sure we keep that human review and the human eyes on it. Member engagement, I mentioned 120 cities. We have a new AI tool that goes out twice a week, and it scans city and county agendas across our entire region and flags them for things related to our programs. So if it's part of our cooperative purchasing program, if it deals with one of our areas of specialty, whatever it might be, mentions us by name, we're made aware in advance, and we can make sure we have teams out there to listen in and be present if needed. So we have earlier visibility and fewer missed items, and we're more proactive in engaging our members as a result. Two more quick ones. I mentioned the big, beautiful bill that was there, and then also business continuity planning. We are a very hurricane-prone region on the Gulf Coast. We do regular tabletop exercises, business continuity, and we're using artificial intelligence to look at different scenarios and understand where the weaknesses are within our systems as we go forward. And these are all team-driven. These are all developed by our teams. Our group that does land use modeling and transportation demand modeling is developing tools that are cutting their time on acquiring the data and massaging the data they're cutting it down to about 10% of what it took before. So now they're spending their time actually analyzing the information and looking at it. And they're already ahead of the curve. They're developing voice-activated AI agents where you can ask in plain language for something. It pulls all the data from our systems, has it ready for you to go, and also natural language, so you don't have to be an expert in that type of work to be able to do queries and use that information for the good that we do. And I think I'll wrap up there and see if we have any questions. Clark, did I miss anything that you want me to cover?
Let me ask ChatGPT. No.
Okay, yeah.
Thank you.
You're very good. So any questions from the group or anything you're curious about? No? Oh, yes, please.
So some of the use studies that you just went over.
Yeah.
How did those ideas, were they generated by people sort of experimenting in the parking lot or thinking about challenges in their departments? And the follow-up is, how did you all prioritize, or how are you prioritizing which tools to develop and implement based just what is your kind of internal decision-making around that?
Sure. So internal decision-making right now, I am giving people a lot of autonomy and free reign to explore and come up with ideas. Each monthly team meeting, it's like, who's got a great success story on using AI? And people all of a sudden pop up with things that we aren't even aware of that aren't on this list. So we're really, truly empowering folks. And we've set up a safe enough environment that they can actually play in it and not get themselves in trouble or cause damage. Some of these, especially the land use modeling and others, that group's very advanced, these types of tools, they immediately start thinking they didn't want to play on naming the pet turtle. They wanted to start looking on this other stuff, right? But people who started out with the naming the pet turtle and the trip to New York City are the ones who came up with the meeting minutes and the ones who came up with scanning the agendas, right, of all of our members as well too. So it's kind of a mix. And I've intentionally put a light hand on it because I kind of want to see what develops over the next couple of months. And then if we start to stall out a little bit, then I'll start to add a little more focus on some specifics. Anything else?
One last one.
Oh, yeah, sorry. Yes.
Are you allowed to tell us what kind of platform did you use?
Oh, yes. Hang on. Sorry. So here's where we start. Thank you very much. Last slide. So here's the AI parking lot at a glance for the team. So we settled on 3. ChatGPT, the obvious one, and we told them what's best for writing, summarizing questions, brainstorming, kind of what it works best with. Llama was in there as well too. And then Claude, which is my personal favorite, that's in there as well too. Really good for scenarios and idea generation. My personal favorite of the mix. So these were the 3 cars, right? And we used ARIA, I think it's called, AIRIA is our main platform where all 3 of these reside, and all of the best practices and the guidance and some prompt generation tools are there as well. So we make sure folks are supported by having, here's how you can write a great prompt. Here's some examples. We even have a tool that'll help you write a prompt and continue to write more prompts if you need to. So we're really making sure folks are supported, not just with the tools, but here's some ways to use it, and we're adding those success stories as well too. Of those 3, I will say, Llama is the one that folks are not as fond of right now. And so they just think it's not as fast and doesn't have the other power that the other 2 have. We're going to be adding more to the parking lot very soon. We're going to add one for static type images or graphic design as well too, coming up in the next month or so. Thank you for that. I appreciate you letting me know. Do you have a follow-up question on that, or is that good?
Yeah, on your parking lot, is that your orchestration layer?
Yes, that's so the question was, is the parking lot the orchestration layer? Yes, so it houses all 3 of the tools. It has the guardrails in it for use of those tools. It has guidance documents and everything's in that, and that's ARIA, AIRIA. I'll make sure Clark and his team have the information that we can send out on that. That was important, so it's not just, hey, use ChatGPT, but use go to this system and go there. One last quick thing that came up with that. I feel really honored that I have a team that is very open with me. And so when I was asking folks, like, how's it going with artificial intelligence in the big staff meeting? What are you doing? And someone said, I actually use Copilot. And I'm like, well, Copilot's not on the list. And they're like, yeah, but it's right there. It's right there. And to get to our orchestration platform, you've got to, where do I go? Oh, there's that thing I got to click on my desktop, and then I've got to log in. I got to use that password 2025 ! But password to get in, and then I get in, and I hope I had the latest update so it works. And so folks, a lot of folks go there, but it's so easy to use the other tools. And so I'm like, this is fantastic news. Then I turned to our IT guys. And I said, let's make a little button where you can just like click on it, where it's there all the time for everybody. You don't have to do all this. They call it the toggle tax or the click, the click tax on it. So thank you. Anything else? All right. Thank you all very much.
Fantastic. If everybody would please rise. This is not a drill, but please rise. All right, we're rounding third, okay? We're heading home. See, y'all needed that. I looked around the room. Okay, so first step, point to 2 people and say, I'm glad you're here. Fantastic. Now, arms up. Wiggle, 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 wiggle. Take one step to the left. Whichever was your left. Take one step to the right. Now, give yourselves a round of applause for taking part of that. Fantastic. You may be seated. You may be seated. So we are again, as I mentioned, we're rounding third, headed home. The next couple of hours will be packed, action-packed. We have a panel that's going to be moderated by our Fairfax County Executive, Brian Hill. It's going to feature some of our top CIOs from the area, and we're going to be introducing them in 2 seconds. And I want you to understand the scope of what we've been doing for the entire day. We've taken it from the federal landscape all the way to regional and glocalizing, that's a true word, glocalizing our impact based on our conversation here. So again, the goal for the entire day was to leave with multiple aha moments, so that way you can go back and say, wow, I didn't know that, right? If you can have 1 or 2 of those, today has been a win. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce the panel members who are going to be taking our place. Okay. And I left my notes right there. No, I got it right here. You can move. All right, fantastic. So coming in, you'll be taking, as I call your name, you'll take the seat to the far right, okay? So coming up, Nate Wentland from Loudoun County, the Chief Information Officer from Loudoun County. Nate. Show him some love, show him some love. We have the legendary Gail Roper from Montgomery County. She's the Chief Information Officer. We also have another legend in our midst, Vanetta Pledger. She's the Chief Information Officer from the city of Alexandria. And since we're calling everybody legends, Stephen Miller from the District of Columbia, our Chief Technology Officer. Incredible leader. And this conversation is going to be led by someone who is one of one, Brian Hill. Hey.
He forgot to introduce me as Synthetic Brian.
Can't wait to build the real one.
Well, good afternoon to COG, Chairman Lusk, astute members. What a powerful day. Thank you, Clark Mercer, whoever Clark is, and COG staff, Rita and Seamus, great job. And to our poet laureate from Houston, Galveston, Chuck Wemple. You go on the ChatGPT or Claude or whatever and put in this man's name, he's a poet, as you could tell by Synthetic Chuck. Joe Paul, excellent approach to making the unknown somewhat known. And to Congressman Beyer, who mentioned the use of AI is growing beyond belief. You know, the amount of engines that we have today are astronomical. I mean, we mentioned some, you got Google Gemini, Zephyr Agents, Copilot, which doesn't really work that well, DeepSeek, Perplexity, Meta. You got a whole bunch of things out there, and you know it's making it very difficult for municipalities to manage. But we have some of the good, the great CTOs here to talk about how we manage in our municipalities. It's a lot to think about, a lot of use, and most importantly, the misuse. But today, I'm hopeful this august group and panel will showcase the good uses of the world of AI. So again, Stephen Miller, Vanetta Pledger, Gail Roper, and Nate Wentland. I won't do that to you, Nate.
Thanks.
Okay. So CTO Miller, give me a citywide example that touches multiple agencies. For example, service requests, licensing, or benefits. Name the KPI and baseline versus now. Oh, I go in.
Boy, oh boy. I don't know if I have all of that in here, but what I'd say, we definitely have use cases in that sector, right? So as we look at actively right now in what we call cohort 2 here in the district, we're asking agencies in the health and human services sector to start looking at how we can create a more efficient process that's more effective at meeting the current regulations that they have to meet. So what we talk about there is how we can get AI involved in creating a more efficient process for us. So asking AI to take a look at the process that we have today, come up with suggestions on how we could do it better, and then looking at how we can have artificial intelligence tools help out to answer questions as people get through a process, a very complex process that's often shared across programs and agencies. So, you know, we think in that cluster, we took the time to work with a lower risk case. We were already modernizing our child and family services system, and we worked to create kind of two use cases there. So first was an AI chatbot that will work the caseworker through policy and guidelines and procedures that they have to follow, so they could ask questions about, you know, family visits. And then we start looking at how we can use AI to start helping them get through the process of their day-to-day work in their caseload. So that could be you're picking up a case for the first time, you're a new employee, you have a case that's been in place for 5 years. It can summarize the events, tell you next steps. It can give you the best practices if you have a family visit coming up or something along those lines. We think that use case is applicable across that cluster. So it may not be specific to family visits, but it may be specific to some form of a on-site inspection or something along those lines that has to occur. So we're pretty excited about those use cases, and we do see that the more we can do across an agency or a cluster, the more effective we can be generally in the district government.
Well, that's an excellent approach. So when we listen to what you're doing in the district, I'm going to ask any of the other panelists, how do you address the privacy, data minimization, and retention when models learn from operational data? Anybody can answer that question. Go ahead. Hit your mic, please. Hit the mic, the button. There you go.
I'll take a stab at it.
Sure.
So we've paid a lot of attention to our data. We consider data Montgomery County's largest asset. So we've kind of gone from, you know, under the hood, ground up. We began to look at our data and classify our data. So we're probably 80% complete with a data classification model that looks at our data, classifies that data as high-risk data. So basically, if it's defined as high risk, then there are only certain things that anyone can do with that data if they're using an AI tool. The other thing that we've done is we've moved most of our data from the premise of Montgomery County Data Center into the Equinix Data Center. We have what we call an immutable pipe that keeps our data off of the internet and transports it to the Equinix Data Center. So there's another layer of security. As it relates to oversight and looking at what is being done by our user base with data, we use two tools. I won't advertise any tool, but we use two tools to actually determine what people are using, how they're using that data. So we have constant oversight of how people are using our data as it relates to AI. I would say, honestly, that the main thing I think is going to challenge municipal government, and I've been in municipal government for a long time, is the intentional focus on data. We have not had to do that at the municipal level for a long time, or maybe even forever. But we're going to have to start to make sure that we know where our data is, do business impact analysis to understand where our critical data lies within the organization and address those issues.
You know, I have just a comment or a question. If I can go from DC down to Nate in Loudon, when did you put in use policies for AI? What year?
We put in use policies for AI within the last year. So we began our guidance on that with the mayor's order in February 2024, and we established usage guidelines, including blocking tools within the last 12 months.
All right, Panetta.
Same, probably about a year ago as well.
2 years ago.
So about, when you say 2 years, 18 months, or do you mean like legit 2 years?
Legit 2 years.
Okay.
We started to work with our legal folks to draft and develop those policies, and then began to vet them and implement.
Okay. Got to turn off one of the other ones. There you go.
We don't and probably won't for AI policy. The reason why is because we're focusing on the data, not the tool. And so the biggest thing we're focusing on is, just like we talked about, the And just like was mentioned before, the car and the people and what you use from a policy perspective, it doesn't matter the tool that comes out, whether it was the internet, whether it was any type of tool that anyone uses. It's about how people are using the data, not the tool that you're using. So we focused on the data and making sure that people were following the policy respective to the data, because that tool will change consistently over time. So we do not have an AI policy. We have a data policy.
I understand that, and I knew that. Now I'm going to come back this way. I'm going to start with you, Nate. Why not have both, a data and a use policy?
Part of it is because as we look at the landscape associated to artificial intelligence, we recognize that it is changing dramatically. If you look at anything over the past 100 years, you look at the rate of change associated to the technologies that have happened. You look at the internet, you look at smartphones, you look at even things on social media. So one of the things that we've done is we've actually put into training associated to not necessarily a policy for the use of the platform, but training individual users on the correct way to use the tools that are out there and moving in a direction associated to making sure people are trained and they understand what is the right platform to use, and then focus on making sure they understand the data and where they're putting the data.
Ms. Roper.
I would say that our data policies were impacted by the AI guidelines. I would also say that part of our thinking there was to make sure that we had some understanding and oversight of what tools people are using, because there are different avenues for various AI platforms, and we wanted to make sure that our data wasn't ending up on an open platform that didn't have a contract in place. So it kind of led to our vendor management for AI as well.
Understood.
I would say it was the latest buzzword, right? Everyone was talking about AI. Every politician wanted your jurisdiction to have an AI policy. So we enacted an AI policy, but I still use that as a way, basically, if you will, just to update the data policy. I still made sure that you understood any data protections that we legally have to comply with are in the AI policy. So if this data is sensitive and it can't be released because it's financial or because it's healthcare or because it's dealing with justice, then we still had that information a part of our AI policy. But to make sure that we're still keeping abreast with what's happening in industry, we went ahead and complied with creating an AI policy, but we just, to Nate's point, just uplifted it to include AI along with our data protections.
Thank you, Mr. Miller.
Yeah, so we relate the two. Our data policy has been in place since 2017, I believe, through an initial mayor's order. And essentially, we knew upfront as artificial intelligence was coming in, if we didn't have good, clean data, if we didn't categorize and classify our data and understand the sensitivity levels of it, understand whether or not we need to bring AI to the data or bring data to AI, that, we weren't really prepared for the moment that was coming up with artificial intelligence. So, we took a lot of time in the last couple of years going through that data with our agencies. I think actually even Vanette and I were in a room together talking about the importance of making sure we had good, clean data about a year ago. I think it's super important. So we definitely make sure that the two are talked about together, and that the understanding of the relationship between our data and our AI policy is probably there to stay.
So I know who signs off on your data policies, because you've said it 3 times already, or maybe 4. So I'm going to, so when I go down the column again, who's signing off on and then reviewing the approval process? And do you require, what approval process do you require before deploying an AI tool? And I will be very interested in knowing who signs off, because I'm always the bad guy in Fairfax. Go ahead.
Yeah, so I'll start. So we have two things that kind of support this. So we have an AI advisory board, which Joe Paul is a member of. It's made up of internal government experts in certain fields, whether it's disability rights or Department of Energy and Environment, Homeland Security and Emergency Management. There's a lot that goes into that AI space, constitutional law, et cetera. And then we look at bringing in outside experts like Joe Paul so that we can talk through the use cases that we see coming up with the agencies. The other side of this is inside of Octo, we have a task force. The task force is handling that initial, Octo being the Office of the Chief Technology Officer, myself. Within Octo, we have a task force that has 5 individuals that are tasked with doing that first line of defense. So as agencies identify use cases or identify tools or identify data sets that they want AI to touch, that first group that's looking at it is that task force that covers software development, infrastructure, security, data, and of course, legal implications. With the eventual goal, though, of getting it into a public meeting so that we can discuss what that tool is going to do, who it's going to impact, how it's going to benefit the residents, how it's going to be transparently used, who's accountable for it, et cetera.
So in my case, I surveyed, other CIOs, what they have produced as it relates to an AI policy. Then from there, we drafted it in conjunction with our Chief Information Security Officer, because we want to make sure we're including cybersecurity practices. And then from that point, it goes to the city attorney, and then ultimately the city manager signs off.
I would say primarily the same as Bonetta. We have an AI Center of Excellence that we developed a couple of years ago where we meet with each department. We come in and talk to them, or they come in and tell us what their needs are in terms of business improvement, what they think AI can do for their organizations. And at that time, we talk about potential policy rules. Some of our departments, Health and Human Services, already have people that build policy. I have a policy person on my staff. Then we work with our county attorney's office, and ultimately the county, the CAO, our CAO reviews those policies, and we get feedback on them, and then they are adopted.
Do you have a good CAO?
Great.
Okay.
We have multiple internal divisions that actually not just within DIT, but also that are within other departments within the county that actually talk through use cases of artificial intelligence. We also have user groups and work groups right now that talk about what are those next phases and those next steps. We see those as really guidelines more than policy, is how we're sort of structuring those. So we look to the business and the business units to say, how do you need to deploy out artificial intelligence and how does that help you? And we look at a larger deployment aspect of saying, okay, how do we control, manage, maintain that over time, both from the individual department level and also to the county level. It does roll up to Tim Hemstreet. It does roll up to the county administration as approval to these deployments, but most of those are guidelines associated to a larger user group that extends beyond just the centralized DIT model.
So I'm going to stay with you, Nate, and I'm going to work my way back. So, when you say what you just said, what checks do you use for fairness and disparate impact? Because, how do you monitor the drift or the error? Because that is big with AI tools. And you launch it, how do you minimize that fact?
Yeah, so that's an excellent point. I think part of that is that you have to always have a checks and balances associated to deployments of artificial intelligence. I think how we're trying to look at that from in a Loudoun perspective is that we really look at a parent-child association for artificial intelligence. And I think that when we look at how those are actually deployed out, you have a parent artificial AI that is actually monitoring the children that are deployed out for each individual department and area. We have 6 to 10 AI deployments that are already deployed out throughout the county. Some are in the sheriff, some are in the different departments that are really focused on their individual business units. But the majority of it is really trying to make sure that we have not only people, but artificial intelligence watching those outputs and those inputs, because the benefit of artificial intelligence that's deployed out to local government, it's not that there's a tool there to make something faster. It's the point that how are people using it, right? If we don't know what the questions that people are asking and the outputs that we're getting from it, then we are losing a massive gold-minded understanding inefficiencies associated to local government. So we're really focusing on the idea of using a parent-child approach that actually looks at the inputs and outputs associated to the use of individual AI to then find the inefficiencies, with prioritization associated automation of the use of AI, which everyone has already gravitated to. So it's really trying to use the tool to create an output of efficiency.
So I would say that we took the approach of making certain that our staff and those individuals that would be using AI within our organization understood their responsibility to it. So we've conducted over 1,000 courses in AI dealing with ethics, prompting, just basically talking about the responsibility of the individual as it relates to AI. I think that helped in terms of each of the trainees understanding, you know, their role in rolling out AI. I also would say that any vendor that we use has to go through an intake process. So we're also looking at, you know, their pledge and responsibility to ethics.
How's your HR policies changed if you're taking it on to the individual?
It has not changed. It has not changed. So basically, it's educational at this point. We have not had any situations where we've had to address issues with anyone using AI in a negative way. So far, our HR policies have not changed.
Okay.
I would say for me, I base it off of that risk, right? So with the justice system, we're actually using a vendor, and that vendor, Peregrine, who presented earlier today, is the one that is the data scientist, is designing the large language model, and is actually aggregating our data to give us that true intelligence. But then I did a partnership with university students in the area, and they used AI tools to look at our website to tell me, how can I make sure my website is ADA compliant? So that's more of a less risk because they're just looking at something that's already publicly available. And then we're also partnering with another a group, and they're actually going to say, let's look at some data that's publicly available, and then we can tell you information about like conflict of information. So for example, if we have information in our code, we have information that's on our website, we have information from state law, is all of it compliant? Is all of it still consistent? And then we just want to use large language models to get an understanding of any inaccuracies or data inconsistencies as it relates across. So I'm just looking at it from a vantage point of if it's very sensitive, if it's healthcare, medical, that for me isn't very, at this point, expert, you know, I'm not going to experiment with those cases, but let's look at other use cases that we can truly experiment with and have those opportunities to see how that AI could work and provide value to the organization.
But you said ADA, you use equity as well?
Yes.
Okay.
Human rights. So we're looking at now, there's a legal mandate from the federal government about making sure your website, American Disabilities Act, is compliant. I think it's by 2026. So at first I could have paid for a vendor to say, come and tell me what I need to do with my website. But I turned around and went to university students, and then they ended up using ADA tools to go against our website and generate a report for us to give us our priorities that we should address in order to make sure we're more compliant.
Hold on, Nate.
If,
Hold on.
I was going to say, can you share that university name with me really quick, please?
See, Nate is different. Next up is DC.
Yeah. So we have, there's a couple of things that we do. So part of that planning process that we ask agencies to go through is to really document whether or not the tool is going to, how it's going to manage to not create or exacerbate any existing inequities. We also look to make sure that there is documented a named human being that's going to be in the loop on every tool. And, we work to make sure that we have guidelines in place so that it's understood. Privacy and cybersecurity are big deals. Procurement through ethical means is good deals. We're currently working through in our pilots themselves, we're working through potential policies around if you did not complete mandatory training for cybersecurity, you did not complete mandatory training for ethics, you do not get access to the tools. Okay. If that has a negative impact on your job, that becomes a labor relations issue that we're currently trying to think through. Yeah.
So as you see, I'm looking at governance, privacy and equity. Go ahead, Nate. Okay. Where have you decided to not use AI in the workforce, in the workplace?
We haven't really made any determination on where it isn't appropriate. Personally, I think as long as it's creating a benefit for the residents of the district, we should consider the tool, no matter what the practice is, but it has to be creating that benefit for the resident.
What's the guardrail?
What's the guardrail? I mean, it's a great question. So one of the guardrails is sitting right in front of me, who will hold me responsible through oversight to a degree. But
Good answer.
yeah, I try. So that really is the reality of it. So again, we're big on like the public engagement around the tools up front. We are big on being transparent about how we're using AI. So really the guardrail is, it is the feedback that we'll get that, maybe this isn't actually creating a benefit. Maybe this isn't sustainable from a budgetary perspective. Maybe it isn't actually providing a safe or equitable determination. And we will, shut those tools off. Just like we shut tools off if they're, legacy or not supported anymore, or they create a cybersecurity problem. It's the same exact thing. If we're not creating that benefit for the residents, if we're not putting in place tools that are affordable for the long term, or that can be held accountable, there's no reason to go forward with them.
Understood.
I would say where it doesn't add value. So what we're doing is we're looking at potential return on investment for our investment in AI. So for each use case that's brought to us, we begin to delve into the value. Is there efficiencies? If there are monetary benefits from using it. So we would not use it if we could not find value in using it. And those, in all of our use cases, come primarily from our departments rather than the IT organization deciding how AI will be used.
So Ms. Roper, when you say you won't use it if you don't see value, define value, right?
Some sort of efficiency improvement.
But is it tied to anything?
I'm sorry.
In Montgomery County, is it tied to anything? For instance, Fairfax, we have a countywide strategic plan. If we can't tie it back to that, it's
Yes.
not going to be, so.
Yeah, absolutely, to our strategic plan.
Okay, all right. Vanetta?
So I define value from the standpoint of the impact, right? So what impact is it going to provide on the services or the community? So if we look at our mayor is here today. So when she talks about after-school programming, so I want to say, okay, well, where's after-school programming? What's the cluster of kids that could take activity? What's the registration look like? Does everyone have access? So how can you actually look at your policies that you're setting and then saying, what's the data sets that we have inside the city that can indicate if those policies and programs that we have in place are actually having the impact desired? Do we have enough kids that have access? If there's too many wait lists, why? If it's we need to make sure that we're having issues with the jail and recidivism rate. Can we tie that back to what we're doing in community services and say, okay, if we do put more safety nets around a family, we can decrease the amount of people that potentially commit crime. If that is that a hypothesis, but let's figure that out and see what the causation is, and then we can use for us as the enablers of government, right? With technology, I think that's our primary focus. How are we making sure that we're leveraging these tools to have that impact?
But are we actually able to take what you just said and actually enforce the change? And if so, how?
I think so. From my vantage point, I think AI is more of a tool set for the elected body as well as the city manager's offices and the leaders, right? It's not necessarily a technology tool. It's a tool for you to really understand what all the services you're providing to your community. And then if you're going to have to make tough budgetary decisions, you can use these tool sets to give you your data, give you your insights to say, okay, maybe we shouldn't do X, Y, Z, so we could alleviate or do more of this, which could result in a better outcome for our community. So I think from my vantage point, that's how we want to leverage technology to better enable how we serve the community.
Yeah, the transition in the operation was always going to be tough.
Right.
What we see in data, we see in data. And then the question is, how do we operationalize the data? Good, but that's a great response. Nate?
I think we really focus on back to the data again, just like you just mentioned, Brian. I think that we look at how we're using that to move forwards and help the residents, help the constituents, and actually help operations and departments within the county. I think that our primary focus is not necessarily putting guardrails around the tool, but putting guardrails around the information and how the information is used. I think that is really the essential point that I think a lot of us have already been mentioning, is that the data is the guardrails that we have to focus on and make sure that the tool aligns with those guardrails.
This is just, I'm going to stay on this topic for the last comment on this topic. Do we now have a central depository or repository before we hit send? with AI and staff? Is that something that we should be thinking about as CTOs? Because from what I understand and the way it works for me, we use it and we send it off. If it's wrong, we have an issue. If it's right, we're told that we have to get it done, or we are expected to get it done. But if it doesn't conform with our policies, what happens? So is there going to be like another fail-safe, another switch before it goes off? Because the human eye is going to be the one looking to make sure it's right.
No, absolutely. I think that we have to utilize, and this is where it comes into the partnerships that you have with a lot of the vendors that are out there, whether it be a Microsoft, whether it be Amazon, whether it be, a Palo Alto or a Peregrine. The idea behind it is that you have to be able to utilize and understand the data that's there, and also how it's analyzed, how it's sent, how it's utilized across the board. And also making sure that there isn't just one set of eyes on it. It's just like cybersecurity. There's no such thing as a single line of defense, right? Yeah. And artificial intelligence is exactly the same way. You have multiple lines of defense associated to how you do things. You don't want to have where you have emails getting sent out and you're not scanning to verify, is that bad data, right? Or is that sensitive data, right? You don't have it where there's a drive or something else that isn't encrypted or isn't something else done to it. AI is the exact same way. Yeah. You have to treat it in a way that there is a secondary approach to it. Even like I said before, a parent-child approach, there has to be a secondary look on it.
Jump in, anybody.
I was just going to say data, like any asset, has context. So you need to have the human in the loop because they have more context, intuition, historical, about that environment, about what that data means. And then I think that's how you will still keep them engaged and ensuring they understand what those outcomes are. I feel like still upskilling the workforce to recognize we all need to be ingrained in our data versus keeping our same processes. Because in order to track the workforce that we want of the future, we have to start reimagining what the work will look like. And I think AI gives us that vantage point.
There are two things that come to mind. One is I believe that, it's imperative to have the data owners understand their responsibilities with data. I said that once, but I'll just say it one more time. And then the other thing is, as an IT organization, the data classification helps us. You cannot take sensitive data and put it into an AI platform because we don't allow that. So, we don't want to be the AI police, but in some regards, we have to be.
Open versus closed, right?
Yeah.
And garbage in versus garbage out. So Nate, you're saying you're allowing open system use of data, correct?
No, we have an internal artificial intelligence that we actually control, manage, and maintain. We actually have multiple internal artificial intelligence on multiple platforms and cloud platforms. We have some that are on Microsoft, some that are on AWS, some that are on others, but every single one is managed, maintained, controlled with integrity. And I think that's also the big thing about it, is that allowing someone to just use AI and allowing that data to leave, you've just lost. Right. And so you have to create those containers. And I think the parking lot idea before of making the parking lot so somebody can drive around is essential. Right. And then you make that parking lot bigger. You turn it into a city. You turn it into a county. You turn it into a nation. Right. And turning that into things where people can build, they can build skyscrapers and do whatever they need to do to be able to get what they need done.
Yeah. Nothing. You good?
No, I mean, it's just adding in. I mean, it's just like cybersecurity, data, artificial intelligence, and or what people are going to be our headaches, and making sure that people are prepared and understand their role. Again, on the parking lot aspect, it is, you don't learn to drive by getting on the highway. Sometimes you start in a parking lot, and that's exactly what we need to be with everything else.
Yeah, not New Jersey. All right, guys, so we talked about governance, privacy, and equity. I'm going to move the topic of conversation to the workforce and change management. And what tasks did AI remove or reduce, and how did you repurpose time saved? Give the before and after in hours per week if you can. I'll start with DC.
So happy to get that much detail in my answer. We've been One of the things that we try to lay out, like we know there's going to be a workforce impact, both negative and positive. The people are going to be able to be more productive, but there will also be down the line conversations about people losing their jobs. But yeah, we want to make sure again that we're getting people to understand the right way to use the tools today. Where are people being successful, right? So as we roll out our pilots, there's a lot of conversations that we have where our users are going to be talking to each other about how they're using it today. Are they just using it to send funny emails to each other, or are they using it to actually summarize their day and determine what their next step should be? Are they using it, as I think about, I was sitting in the audience thinking about when is the last time Vanetta and I were in a room together. I was looking it up and it was like, I was able to find through Copilot a pretty quick way. Not saying Copilot is God. I know someone dumped on it earlier today, but the tools are there. As long as you're giving it as long as you're giving it good data, it's going to be there. And that's what we need our people to understand in our workforce, that, we're hoping that AI won't have a negative impact on them, and we're hoping that they can run with what we're giving them, crawl, walk, run with what we're giving them, and eventually, we can get to a place where we're in an AI utopia in about 20 years when I retire.
I would say for us, an example was our jail. There's a report that they would generate that dealt with inmate activity. They used to take like 2 weeks to do. Once we put Peregrine AI against it, it takes 2 hours. It's able to reconcile all the information, give the sheriff and the deputies what they need as it relates to the operations in the jail. I would say, although it's an operational efficiency, it's also causing staff to think of different work they want to do with AI, or they want to challenge themselves on how to do more analysis as it relates to AI. So although we're attaining operational efficiencies, I also think it's transforming the way people are able to work.
An example I think that would correlate to your question is around using the 311 call center, and we're at a 2.0 version of our bot. There are 147 languages, and what we did there, we did early on. It was around COVID, and we were having real challenges with allowing people in to get COVID vaccinations and registered and those kinds of things. So basically, we enabled ChatGPT on the back end, used a tool, and now we've migrated that to Copilot. We're using that to impact. So the advantages that we saw there was a backlog for quite a bit of time that was actually improved, I would say, in a matter of 3 days, that we saw where people could actually get through and get those calls and get those registrations done. So that was probably the greatest impact that we've seen so far.
Okay, so stay with me on this one, Brian. So in the 1450s during the printing press, there were.
Did you just say the 1450s?
1450s to 1600s. Just stay with me on this one. Just let me get through it. I swear it's gonna only take like 45 seconds. I promise.
Hold on 1 second. Are you using
ready?
llama for this?
No, I'm just stay with me on this. Stay with me on this, right? So during the 1450s to 1600s, there's a printing press, right? It took around 150 years to globally actually expand, right? The Industrial Revolution, 1700s, there was people who did cottage textiles and other things. Jobs that were created were machinists, factory workers, engineers, mechanics. Telephone, telephone was in the 1800s and 1900s. We had telegraph operators. We had the Pony Express, if everybody remembers that. Now we actually have telephone switch operators, linemen, call centers. Now we go into GPS, map makers. That was in the 1990s to 2000s. That was map makers. That was cartographers. Now those are actually GIS analysts, which are in every single county and every single city in the entire United States. We go into smartphones. We had camera filmmakers. We have MP3 player designers. We now have app developers. And we now have designers. We have economic workers. Even have people who do Uber and Instacart, right? When we get into generative AI, we have basic things associated to people who look at like data entry, low-level customer support, and like certain things that are in help desk. Those are replaced with things called prompt engineers, AI policy analysts, and data creators. So it's not about the loss of job. It's about the change of society.
No, I totally agree with you. And you brought me down memory lane because, I'm not going to date myself, but go from black and white TV and rotary phones, right? Right? To AI and Al Gore, to AI to Chat GBT. The question is, for us in this room, how do we reskill, upskill? Because it is about augmentation. So what are we doing to put in place for our not only our residents, but our core workers to reskill, upskill, and augment what they do?
I would love to start with that one. So,
I mean, you brought us there.
there we go. So I think it's looking at what you do in a local government. Things like reports, things like dashboards, taking those individuals that are doing that and training them on artificial intelligence, training them on interactions where they're human interactions, or they become prompt engineers, or they become data curators is the way to go. So that way you take your workforce that you have, train them up so that way they learn and they start advancing forwards. And it's about adoption. Adoption is the key.
I would say much of that is cultural. I think that part of our success has been looking at the talent we have within the organization. We started pretty early on with low-code, no-code technologies, and that whole team of individuals really just kind of took to Microsoft Copilot, Microsoft Studio, the products that we're using. And then during our implementation of AI, we actually made it a program where those individuals who agreed to take the training were also required to do certain exercises. So they began to use Copilot and AI in a way that benefited them. So we're trying to create this AI community within the organization where people are familiar with it, know how it can benefit their operations, and that has been highly successful for us. As a matter of fact, a few weeks ago, I had a situation where I lost my audio on my laptop and I was unable to get through Teams meetings. So I started using the workaround with my cell phone. But I used Copilot to write a comedic skit about my week. And it said something like, the CIO is miming on Teams meetings. And then it ended up by saying, but at the end of this, she was able to sign 25 contracts, get through 14 Teams meetings. So you gotta have a little fun with it, I think, that, it can all be studious. And I think people really get engaged when you find ways to get them involved in how it can be used both, from business process reengineering standpoint and also from a standpoint to just share information.
You have anything else to add? Anybody? No?
No, I mean, I'd say, we look at this, we have a larger strategy around this, and in general, we want to make sure that we're making workforce investments in the technologies that we support in the district government. So if we're running Cisco networks, we want to make sure we have Cisco certified network engineer programs that are out there. It's the same thing with AI. We want to make sure that we have programs that are going to be aligned with the tools that we're using every day so that the residents of the district can be trained in it, our workforce can be trained in it. We can create a more efficient, more effective government by, getting those involved, those that are impacted, involved in fixing it.
Yeah, and I just want everybody in the room to know, especially our elected officials, that we have to think about so many things with everything we do on a day-to-day, but AI has been very different. And I tell people that COVID was easy to deal with. AI is just off the absolute chain because you don't know where the data is coming from. You don't know if it's good or bad or indifferent data, but guess what? Everybody's using it. So I've been told that I'm going over a little bit of time, which I don't care. So I'm going to ask you all to answer this question. What would you like your elected officials to know today about AI and where you would like to take it in your community? I'll start with Nate.
To help the community, I think the focus is what can we do with artificial intelligence to then make our communities and our areas better. I think, and it's not just about a tool that can rewrite an email. It's not just about a tool that can look up data. It's about a tool that can help you provide better service, better interactions, and be more involved and engaged with your residents and with your businesses. And it should not be looked at as a simple tool that is something that just either writes emails or does those things. It's so much more than that, to be able to take that tool to make a better engagement, a better interaction, and a better connection with the residents and businesses within your locality.
Ditto to all of that. I also think that it should be known that it is the greatest tool that we'll have in our lifetime to make better decisions as a government.
Hold on. Are you sure about that? Because when I was, black and white TV went to color, I was like, wow, right? Are you sure? All right. Go ahead, Vanessa.
I'm just going to steal the terminology that was used this morning because I really liked it from the standpoint of decision assistant. So ensure that we're investing in our data and investing in our artificial intelligence platforms, but exercising it to be a decision assistant, giving you information and intelligence as you're planning policy, as you're programming, as you're budgeting, whatever it is you're dealing with, to Nate's point, as in addressing the constituency, how are we going to reflect and use this data to help best inform us?
Okay, so looking my council member right in the eye. Investments in AI, they are going to help us create a more efficient government. They are going to help us create some level of return on investment that will allow us to run more efficiently. And that's something that we really need to think about. And it may not be readily apparent today as we start to figure out what things are going to cost, but down the line, we're going to get to a steady state with this where we know how it's going to be effective, how it's going to create more efficiencies, and it's just going to keep rolling and rolling. Eventually, when we get to quantum computing, it'll be even faster and do more. So it'll be amazing. Let's get ready for it.
Well, as we close, I just want to say, as public service, as public employees, we look for service. We talked about engagement, community, interaction, business, decision assistance, investments, or return on investment. That's what we do each and every day. So as public servants, I want to say thank you. But before we close, I'm going to ask anybody who has a question for these talented CTOs. If there's, we can't go to DC, so we're going to go here. Yes, sir.
Thank you. So each one of you touched on some of the use cases in your organizations. Can you give us maybe one or two of them? And did you develop them in-house using models like ChatGPT or any other LLM or RAG models? Or do you use any third-party vendors in those development?
So we're primarily working with third parties. Getting into the AI business is a little scary. It's significant capital investment, and it's a capital investment that needs to stay in a loop. GPUs are expensive. They burn out. They need to be replaced. Generally, I'd say the use cases that I'm most excited about, it's going to be within our call center. So getting all of our call centers onto a common operating platform so that they were interchangeable, easily interoperable was a big challenge during the super easy pandemic, apparently. But the idea now of putting in place artificial intelligence into those call centers is a lot easier because we've worked with partners over the years to get every agency call center onto one single thing. So anything that we can make work at one agency, we can easily make work at another within days.
Is it going to be quick?
Yeah.
Okay, go.
I would say we're doing all our development in-house. We have not used vendors at all. And I would say that, the model of repeatable call center models and using that across the organization is proving to be beneficial for us so far.
Okay, I'm going to go Councilman Allen, then I'm going to go to Supervisor Alcorn, and then we're going to shut it down.
Thanks. First off, thanks all four of you. Really, really helpful. You count, Brian, but you were posing the questions. They were answering them.
You're right.
All five of you, fantastic. Really, really appreciate it. And of course, really grateful for COG even putting this whole day together. It's really helpful. I I was going to ask a little bit about, so each of you as experts within your agency and scope and the work that you're doing, as the policymakers, the elected official, we're trying to oftentimes look for these different intersections between a lot of the different issues that are taking place. We touched on workforce for a little bit. I think we got a lot more to do in that space because I'm not convinced necessarily that every worker, when we heard Rita talking earlier about a pallet loader was taking away 3 jobs, I'm not sure those 3 jobs could become a data curator. And so how do we make sure the person who is most at risk of having their job taken away or replaced actually has that opportunity? But you've probably seen the cartoon that's been floating around for the last few days, the person stepping outside their house saying, ChatGPT, why is my electricity bill going up so much? Sitting next to the data center. So from a government perspective, as we're watching energy costs just drive up in a significant way, you really well outlined the potential benefits of using AI to help deliver services. I also, though, have to think about, okay, how does my government pay its bills? What are my energy costs? We're watching our city energy costs continue to go up. My residents are seeing their energy costs going up. I got constituents complaining about how their Pepco bill just keeps going through the roof. Where do you see the intersections of what gains could be achieved? But obviously it comes at a cost somewhere, something, whether that's the water consumption we were talking about earlier for cooling or for our electricity demand. How do you work within your respective governments to help that intersectionality so that we're weighing all those things together?
From Loudoun County, can I take that question? Because
Yeah, absolutely.
I would love to take that question. So it comes into the aspect of when you look at the energy consumption associated to an AI, the majority of the consumption of energy comes from the creation of a new artificial intelligence engine. When we come to local governments, you don't have to have the thing that is brand new, that is generative AI, that is actually trying to curate new and evolving information on a consistent basis. As a local government, you could say, listen, like we do in Loudoun, we said, listen, we're going to stay with 4.5. GPT 4.5, and we're going to use that because we know that also has a low energy consumption, it has a high rate on return, and it allows us to implement across any data set, anywhere for any integration. So we're actually taking the idea set of saying, let's not just go to the fastest, newest, quickest thing. Let's just not go to some other platform that's out there that's utilizing too much energy. We are going to a point where we say, this is what fits us. And it allows us to not have to go out and consume as much energy so that way we're thinking of it as a local government perspective, but we're also able to utilize that platform to help us and become a lot more efficient.
Supervisor Alcorn.
Thank you. Great panel. Good response too. That's really interesting. I want to get back and wrap up with just a use case question. Are any of you using AI in the permitting process, either prior to permitting in terms of, County Executive Hill can answer this one too. Either in the compliance assistance before an application's filed or as an internal process internal tool to help with the reviews? And how's it working? And curious.
I can't go as far as saying how it's working. We are actually now in an RFP process reviewing a permitting, AI permitting solution.
DC?
Nate, were you going to say something? You got data center?
No, no, that's the data centers.
Counties, there are counties out there that AI, mostly third-party solutions for improving the permitting process.
Yeah.
Reviewing what are local ordinances, what are
State code.
tremendous amount.
Right.
So Loudoun and Fairfax are doing just that. We're looking at our codes and seeing where the intersects are to make the process a little bit more streamlined. You and I have spoken about that, and we're going down that road now, but Fairfax counties is so voluminous, it's going to take us a little bit of time. I know they're doing it in Loudoun County because the county administrator there and I speak about that process all the time because we want to get it quicker, faster, but yet we still want to be reliable and time and money, right? So the more time it takes, the less money we as counties generate, and we hear from the business community. You got something to say now?
Yeah, just really quick, we're also utilizing Peregrine as an enterprise data warehouse to actually pull that data out so we can do analysis of it away from the core system and be able to then use artificial intelligence to do things with it. So we're also partnering with certain entities that allow us to be able to use and diagnose and dissect that data separately and allow us to be able to create efficiencies away from the commodity system and do other things with artificial intelligence away from that.
Now, Peregrine is a great commodity because we also use it in our crime center, as Major Hill said earlier. What they do in Loudoun, we do that in Fairfax, but there are some limitations with the LDS side, the land development side, but we're working on that with them. And I want to say thank you to each and every one of you for allowing us to have this time. It's great meeting you guys, and continue doing the great work. Joe, you're up.
All right, Joe Paul is going to take us home. I wanted to do a quick intro of Joe and build a little bit on the previous couple of panels. We are rolling out something similar, and we use our National Association of Regional Councils and Chuck, what they're doing in Houston to kind of roll out for our staff here. But want to just flag, Joe Paul is an absolute gem in this region. So if you're thinking through at the local level what you need to do for AI, policies, where it can be used. Joe's a serial entrepreneur in Florida State Business Hall of Fame. He has a book called AI for Good. You will each be getting a copy of it. It is literally hot off the presses, so it's en route to COG now. It is a series of case studies of where AI is being used in the public and private sectors for good. And I just wanted to give that plug. So if you're thinking as you leave today, man, we really need to think a little bit, what are we doing at my locality? What could we do to roll out some of these things in a thoughtful way? I am giving Joe a plug here. Please, we'll pass out all the information, but invite him to visit your locality. And with that, Joe, I'll hand it over to you.
Thank you so much, Executive Director Clark Mercer. We're bringing it home, y'all, and the crowd is thinning. That's bad news. So it makes me think some of these slides should have been first, but we're going to present as if there are 10,000 people in the room still with us, right? So we're going to be bringing it all together. One of the things that I wanted to bring up is our partnership with Amazon Web Services. Something to understand is this takes more than just the government. This is going to take a multifaceted approach to comprehensive AI implementation. Okay, we're going to need public sector involved. We're going to need private sector. We're going to need government. Everyone plays a role, and so everyone plays a role. So for about 10 minutes, we're going to be talking to some representatives from Amazon Web Services about AI implementation on a global scale, and then I'll finish off with, okay, there we go. I'll finish off with some comments. So one thing I wanted to show you is everyone participated, most people participated in the Pulse survey today, and I wanted you to kind of get a 10,000-foot view of how your responses panned out. And so 25% of the folks reported using multi-team AI use, which is low but high, right? So 1 out of 4. It's not out of context of where the rest of the nation is, but we can definitely use some improvement there. Another 48% are in pilots or individual only use. So we see that, and we've seen this already, even in the private sector, we're not as restricted as maybe our government partners can be. So our ability to scale is a lot faster. 29% have an approved AI policy, and one of the things that we would definitely want to recommend, and we have some call to action at the end of this. One of the things we want to recommend is a comprehensive approach to AI implementation and AI governance. And again, path to scale, the biggest lift is converting those pilots and individual use into sanctioned team workflows. The one message that I want you to get from this is don't be afraid to try. Don't be afraid to try, okay? So really quickly, I have a few questions that I want to ask our partners at Amazon Web Services as it relates to artificial intelligence, AI implementation, and AI for good. One Before I do that, I'll allow them to spend a couple of seconds introducing themselves. Sergio and Aaron.
Good afternoon. I'm Erin McKinney. I'm Principal Policy Counsel for the AWS State, Local, and Education Public Policy Team. I'm based in Arlington, live in Falls Church, so really fun to be here today with all of you. Thank you for having me. My role on the team is basically reviewing all of the great ideas from state and local policymakers on AI. Joe put up a stat earlier on last year's flow of AI policy that hit our landscape. And this year, it really was over 1,000 bills so far in the state and local governments. But in addition to that, there's been a lot of good policy that's come forward from the CIO offices, from the CTO offices, from executive orders. There's just been a lot of good ideas. So I've been tasked with evaluating those and analyzing those for our businesses and helping you all make decisions to do what's best for your constituents.
Awesome. Thank you, Aaron. And we're going to hear from Sergio Ortega, Sergio AI.
Yep, that's a fun email to have, a special one for sure. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Sergio Ortega, and I'm the national leader for artificial intelligence and machine learning for all the state and local governments, half of the education, higher education institutions in the country. Basically, hopefully, I can bring some ideas or some of the patterns that we're seeing around the country of success, what is working, why is working, what is not working, why some adoption in potentially about some public, private sector practice is working to translate into the public sector. Myself, I have worked only for public sector for almost 27 years. I've been doing artificial intelligence for 25 years. So hopefully I can leave some message that is valuable for you.
Awesome. Fantastic. So really quick, we hear a lot about the risk of AI and where AI goes wrong, but what are some of the examples that stand out to you of where AI has actually gotten it right? Some scalable best practices that AI has actually gotten it right?
So actually the best practice that we are seeing is stop thinking on AI. The best start is just stop thinking on AI. We have been hearing about value, business value, organizational value, value for citizens, value for public workers, right? So the beginning is actually identify the use cases from what is bringing value to the organization. Don't think about AI. AI is a tool. At the end, when we identify and prioritize these use cases, the last step is to actually identify if AI is a proper tool that can support the success for these use cases. That's where we're seeing success. So interestingly enough, the most boring use cases that you can think are the most impactful, are the most successful. The gentleman from the great state of Texas put a nice roadmap that makes a lot of sense. And why is that? Because as public sector, what we do, we process documents, we process requests, we do permitting, like it was mentioned, all those things. There are core processes, right? So what we want to do is focus on that thing. As vendors, we tend to say things like, if you use my tool, you're going to get more efficient. But there's not such a thing as the blanket efficiency just for using tools. What is going to happen is when you think about use cases where the user is going to use AI every day without even imagining that he's using AI, is when it's actually valuable. Like if I empower a social worker in protection services to do better summaries with their documents, right? I have a live example, LA County, 300 cases per social worker. Each case managed 20,000 pages to 50,000 pages. It's humanly impossible for a social worker to process that. Number one question that a social worker cannot answer is, are the parents of the kids alive or not? Why? Because the sea of information, right? But when we enable capacities of having conversation with data, with documents, without being technical, that's when we empower workers, in this case, social workers, Now they can navigate that sea of information, being effective and delivering value to the kids that they're protecting. And like that, I can give examples on closing gap of justice. We can give examples on how empower, we can do that with a social worker, imagine what we can do with a public defender. Exactly the same thing, right?
Fantastic.
And benefits. What about benefits? One of the cool things about all this is navigating benefits. So if permitting is complex, now apply for benefits, right? And not only that, ensure that those benefits applications are correct and is not costing to the county. Those inaccuracies cost money. And apparently the federal government doesn't want to pay for them anymore. Have you made the exercise of the cost of that association of cost? We have helped some states, couple of states, state of Arkansas, state of Missouri. Number of inaccuracies last year will it completely the HHS state budget because the government, federal government won't basically cover that anymore. So identifying those high value cases is where we want to go. We want to identify. AI is the last thing we think about.
Thank you, Sergio. And Aaron, I want to lean on you in really from the policy perspective. AI is moving faster than most policy guardrails obviously can handle or frameworks. From your perspective, what guardrails or principles are most urgent to put in place now that will influence AI, ethical use of AI and AI for good?
So one of the things that we've seen in state and local policymaking is a determination both of how we define the users in what we call the AI value chain. So one initial guardrail that comes to mind is just how do we define the people who are playing in this space, who are deploying these tools, who are fine-tuning LLMs, who are, engaged in AI systems overall. That's one area. I also think it's important to let our users and deployers have an opportunity to sort of sandbox with these tools and have an opportunity to review them with their data so that they know that the data that they're using is tested and mitigating any potential risk of harm to constituents or to consumers. So we're seeing some movement in that area.
Awesome. And this next question is actually, I want both of you to answer. And it's going to lead into my closing comments after this session that focuses on bias and inequity. And they're clearly policy concerns as much as they are technical concerns. And so I'm curious, what role do you see policymakers playing in making sure AI closes gaps instead of continuing to widen them?
I was just going to chime in quickly and say the biggest way that I think policymakers can do that is focusing on the risks. And not only risks to the users, constituents, agencies using these tools, but also in the ways in which they're deployed and the way that policy is written. So we, propose that a risk-based framework is the first approach to any new policy making. And I think keeping that in mind is most important when policymakers are drafting new legislation.
Super helpful.
The other is, and I think it's important, it was a matter of time, is understanding the flexibility that legislation and policy should have in order to promote innovation and efficiencies. We have a great real-life example again as well. State of California was potentially the first one, if I am not wrong, that with a very formal policy around artificial intelligence. And there was a lot of areas of opportunity there still, like any kind of policy. But after 2.5 years, 3 years, if I'm not wrong, Governor Newsom basically put an executive order around innovation with AI to close the gaps in budget. So now AI is a tool that if budgets are not growing, how are we going to grow efficiencies with the use of a technology, despite of the original legislation? So now legislation is adapting to promote and accelerate innovation to provide more value to citizens and provide more value to public workers and elected officers.
And we're also seeing policymakers take a look at the existing framework within a state, also within the context of federal law, to ensure that any new policy fits into what's already in place, what's already enacted, so that those gaps are filled that pertain particularly to the use and deployment of artificial intelligence.
Awesome. I have one final question. Looking ahead, what kind of collaboration do you believe is required between public and private sectors that will be essential to build trust and ensure AI serves the public interest?
Transparency, like full-blown transparency. Things like how you do things, what are the risks that I have, what kind of protections you provide to me should be answers that should be black and white, should not be hesitation, should not be let me ask my policy person or my lawyers, should be very transparent. In the other hand, the collaboration, I'm going to extend a little bit even that, is between academia, public sector, and private sector. We have a very successful practice engaging that collaboration. How, for example, state of Massachusetts, in partnership with Northeastern University, are exploding the number of use cases that they're implementing. Why? Because we, private sector, provide tools, provide expertise. Academia provides hands, provides the know-how, and provides potentially the gaps that you have in the skill set within the public organizations. You provide those vehicles for that to happen.
I would also say leveraging our company and many others in the space to ensure that you're getting for your constituents the right level of education, upskilling. The sort of investments that you're making in this space should be supported by some of the work that we're doing, and we've made those commitments to help you all train your workers and insert new policies into education systems so that there's more learning happening both at the K through 12 and the higher ed level.
Fantastic. Let's hear it for Amazon Web Services. Thank you. Rounding third, y'all. So if you look at the screen, those are a lot of titles. And I wanted to be clear, you never know who you're talking to or what their background is. And so I wanted to share that. But the 4 titles that matter most to me are husband, father, that's my beautiful wife there, my son who will be 3 in November, leader, that's when we won Nonprofit of the Year from the DC Chamber when I was running Bite Back. And then I'm one of 5 individuals who is honored worldwide at South by Southwest as an innovator in technology, and that's me signing one of my books. And just this year, the Washington Business Journal said we're one of 11 startups to watch. They know what they're talking about. Subscribe if you can. All right, feel free to laugh at these great jokes. So a little bit about our company. I started this company. My son was born, and I knew I wanted to be a present father. And I also knew that working 80 hours a week was not going to contribute to me being present. So I started thinking about what's next and how do I create an exit strategy that safely offboards my CEO position at the previous organization and start this. And so I dug deep and started learning as much as I could about artificial intelligence. Went back to school, Wharton Business School, to get digital leadership cert. And our company is thriving. And so here's what we do in a nutshell, in 30 seconds or less. We help organizations implement AI ethically, from discovery all the way to training, all the way to implementation, even building bespoke tools and solutions. And we leverage some of the big boys, right, like Amazon Web Services, to power a lot of our tools and their cloud services. This is one of our flagship products called Velocity, where let me take one half step back. All of our tools serve people. And so one of the things that you'll see common for us is AI for Good. This is focused on supporting nonprofits and foundations getting access to grants. And so you can find out more about it, myvelocity.ai. But this automates grant writing into seconds. And so this tool has the ability to scrub the internet to find out what you're eligible for. With one click of a button, you can prepare your application. These folks are not real humans. These are agents that we've built within the organization that work around the clock. They don't complain. They show up on time. I don't have to pay for health care. This is fantastic, okay? And they work around the clock. And I show this to you because the future really looks like this. organizations leveraging agentic AI to automate and augment some of the workflows that are not necessarily, not everything needs to be automated. I think we agree with that, right? Number one. Number two, we also want to make sure that humans are in the loop at all times, from the beginning, middle point, and end. And when you think about the changing landscape of the workforce, job design and scope of work is going to change. Because if artificial intelligence is handling 75%, then who's supervising artificial intelligence work, right? And so when you're thinking about upskilling and reskilling your staff, it's important to equip them with tools like artificial intelligence to help them enhance what they already do. So if you're preparing one widget before AI, how many widgets can you actually produce now with the support of artificial intelligence? Okay, so really quick, I wanted to show you something and the power of artificial intelligence.
Breakfast is ready, baby.
I think I want to build a time machine so I can visit my grandpa.
That is a wonderful idea.
I wonder what adventures await. Hello, Grandpa.
Adonis, what a surprise.
Are we going in, Grandpa?
Yes, my boy, let's see what the past holds for us.
Anything is possible if you don't give up. See you next time on Adonis's Adventures.
For more Adonis's Adventures, please like and subscribe.
So why I'm proud of this is because I created that from scratch, leveraging artificial intelligence. And here's what's important about that. Back in middle school, I was in media center. I did class announcements. I know it's surprising, but I did class announcements, morning announcements. But during that time in middle school, we learned about camera angles and lighting and pan, tilt, everything that you can learn about media. And I didn't know when that knowledge would benefit me until I leveraged it to clearly describe what I wanted in the prompt and what it created. Now, one step back, I created Adonis's Adventures because I wanted my son to see images of him, right? And it's so important to a child's psychology to see them as a hero. And every book that my wife and I bought, he was not represented. And so I was like, we're gonna do something about that. And artificial intelligence helped with that. And so I will tell you, when I initially put in the prompt about a handsome 7-year-old boy, et cetera, what do you think that boy looked like? You guessed it, not like mine, right? But also, it was important, again, for you to leverage AI for good. This is one of the ways that we're leveraging AI for good. And I also share that because I want you to know that there are some skills that are in you right now that AI is designed to enhance. AI is designed to enhance, and all you have to do is dig deep. And Now my son will, has a paid YouTube and TikTok and that I've created all the videos for. And so he doesn't have to work when he turns 18, right? He'll have an option to do so. He's going to college. He doesn't have a choice of that. But, well, he may. We'll never know. Anyways, let's move forward. So the North Star for this is we want to make sure that we build AI that sees every resident, every human clearly, including the kid who thinks he can fly, including the kid who thinks he can go into a spaceship and has the audacity to believe that he can build a time machine to go back in time. So equity is not charity when we're developing artificial intelligence. It's accuracy, legality, and public trust. Now here's 4 facts that you cannot unsee. Right? Artificial intelligence is being deployed across the country, across industries. And in healthcare, this particular algorithm gave less care to Black patients than it did every other patient. And when in the earlier session, we were talking about computer vision and facial recognition, and you see that false positives from 10 to 100 times higher for African Americans, Asians, and women's, leaning heavily on African Americans. So when you think about public safety and implementing AI, what happens when a police officer gets a ping from AI that, hey, this is the person, this is the person what we're looking for, but it's not them? What happens? So we need to really think about, before we deploy these tools, are they really responding to the people that is going to be impacting most? And from my perspective, transparency is key. We covered that. You need to know what's behind the code. You may not need to know the entire code, but you should know. You should be able to look under the hood. And you may not even understand what's happening under the hood, but I think it shouldn't prevent you from looking. Speech to text. Error rate nearly 2 times higher for Black speakers. I know because I talked to Siri and she's like, what, huh? I'm like, hey, Siri, do that. And she's like, I don't know, does not compute. And so which is true. And these are facts that you can't unsee. 23% unusable versus 1.6% for white, right? And so what you need to understand about technology, 9 out of 10 tech jobs are not held by Black or Latinx folks. 9 out of 10. How many people knew that? Oh, fantastic. An aha moment to put in your pocket. All right, medical imaging. AI reads race from x-rays, right? Now, unfortunately, you can't tell who is who from x-rays, right? Now, what does all this mean? It means we need humans still, right? This is not just jobs or opportunities we toss over to artificial intelligence. We absolutely need humans. Now, what does this mean for Metropolitan Washington Council of Governments? Risk. If we do nothing, inequality, inequity scales at machine speed and erodes trust in digital services. So we have to do something. Being quiet is not an option. And we give companies a little bit more grace when they have under construction signs on their doors, true or true, right? We pardon their dust. But if you are doing this undercover and nobody knows, it's going to be hard to pardon your dust. Ensure that everyone within your ecosystem knows you need a comprehensive communication strategy to inform everyone within your ecosystem, your stakeholders, about what you're doing, what you're undertaking. But again, doing nothing is no longer an option. Guardrails. We already have the AI Bill of Rights and NIST AI risk management, but local governments are not necessarily leveraging them. Some don't even know they exist. So you have an opportunity to use them today. And the playbook, right? Counties have NACO's AI County Compass for risk tiers. NACO is a very good partner, and I strongly suggest everyone kind of reach out to them. They've done a lot of the work, just like Houston, Galveston Area Council has done a lot of the work. You don't have to do this on your own. There's zero pride of ownership when it comes to artificial intelligence, really. There really isn't. So you need to reach out to the folks who've already done a lot of the work and borrow and adjust, right? It may not fit, but there's some parts that will fit. I remember when I was getting married, everyone had advice for me, and I gave them the opportunity of listening, but it doesn't mean I took all that advice, right? And so it's the same thing with artificial intelligence. Find out what's out there and apply what works, all right? Now, here's a clear call to action for everyone in here in order to build equitable AI in our region. Again, it's not enough to just build AI, but the least of us need to be brought along. Any community that is not focused on the least of us, you're already losing. It's so important. I spoke at the White House, past administration. I spoke at the White House about AI implementation, and I was the only one who mentioned this. But I said, we need to have a national reskilling and upskilling initiative where we leverage public-private partnerships and government funding to train our citizens, because it's about to be bad, y'all, okay? So yes, not all jobs will be taken from AI, but a lot of the ones who, in manufacturing, farming, some of the even in accounting, some of the skills that are repeatable, AI can do, and actually can do with less error. What happens to those people, which is a question that we need to ask. So the first thing you can do, adopt guardrails now. Even if you don't have a privacy policy, develop one, borrow one, adjust them. Use the NIST AI risk management framework. I mean, they're turning into kind of the holy grail of strategy in terms of ethical AI implementation. All right, next thing, test what we buy. Require bias and equity audits for every AI procurement. No test, no deploy. One tool that we designed for a client did exactly that. So they had trouble recruiting non-white males, right? And then when you look into their office, guess what you see? White males. So they said, well, we want to increase the amount of diverse candidates that we receive. And I said, well, training the tool on what you've done before is not effective because it will assume that this is what you want. This is what success looks like. So we developed synthetic data to train the model on identifying the folks that are not in the room, right? And they increased their diversity hires by 23%, right? And diversity across race and gender. Create local benchmarks, right? Stand up shared tests for 311, 311, 911, right? So that's probably one of the most important pieces here. There's a lot of information and knowledge within this room. The problem is it's not shared. It's not shared. Everyone's keeping it a secret. Everyone's keeping their AI journey, AI implementation a secret. It should not be. You should be proud to wear that A. It is not a scarlet letter A. It is not a shame. You shouldn't be ashamed to use AI. I use AI 1,000% of the time. In fact, I use AI probably 8 to 9 hours a day, every day. Now, here's what's important. 1 hour, my 1 hour equals 7 to 10 hours of productivity. How do I know that? AI told me. Right? Quick use case. We were preparing something and I was leveraging AI and I said, okay, so we're done with this project, but how long would it have taken me if I didn't have you? I was like, well, it would have taken you probably 100 to 120 hours. I was like, gosh. I was like, okay, all right, well, let's quantify that. Let's dollarize that, right? How much savings did we receive? And it was a lot, okay? So based on my hourly rate and the amount of time that I put in, et cetera. So again, artificial intelligence is not designed to do the work for you. It's designed to supplement what you do and enhance what you do, but you should not be afraid to leverage it, okay? Last but not least, engage our residents. As I mentioned, serving on the AI advisory board for the DC government has been really a highlight for me because I get to actually be on the ground listening to citizens' needs. And again, a lot of times we're producing solutions for people who are not in the room. They need to be in the room. There should be much more public forums where citizens can come in and understand what this technology is and how it's impacting them in real time, especially public safety. Going into, because AI is biased. How many people believe that? All right, even if you don't believe it, I'm telling you, AI is biased, right? It's leveraging biased information. Now, you may have some closed sets that have limited data outreach, but AI is biased in nature because it's replicating us and the information that we've put out there. So what do? You bring this to the people. You don't wait for them to ask questions. You don't implement and then see what happens and say, okay, now we need a risk management system or to mitigate the risk. You do it right up front. Have open forums, invite your residents to be a part of this journey. This is an incredible journey. We have never been in a revolution like this. Artificial intelligence has transformed my life completely, and it continues to do so on a daily basis. And so much so, let's see here. She's asleep. All right, I'm not talking about my wife. All right, are you there?
Hey, Joe, absolutely here and ready to jump in. Just let me know what you need help with today and we'll get right to it.
All right, so check it out. I'm, well, let me see. Let me test your knowledge. Where do you think I am right now?
I know you're usually based in Washington, D.C.
Well, no, not like based. I mean, what am I doing at this moment? Like, what do you think I'm doing?
Got it. Well, knowing you, you're probably multitasking something interesting. Maybe prepping for a presentation or finessing a strategy. But hey, I'll keep it engaging. You tell me if I'm warm or cold.
All right, I won't tell you either, but I will tell you that I'm at Metropolitan Washington Council of Governments. You remember the work that we've done for them?
Absolutely. I remember that well. You're right in the middle of MWCOG territory, and that definitely rings a bell. We've shaped some pretty strategic AI conversations with them, so I'm sure you're cooking up something impactful.
Fantastic. So look, I'm sorry to cut you off. You don't have to say sorry, y'all, but I'm kind to my age. So sorry to cut you off. So I have a captive audience here, and I want you to wow them. So walk them through how I leverage you on a daily basis, and include some pieces about Adonis, if you could.
You've got it. All right, let's give them a little behind the scenes peek. So folks, imagine Joe here basically has me on speed dial every day as his AI thought partner. We tackle everything from strategy sessions to brainstorming how to make AI more equitable. And yes, occasionally we make a guest appearance from his little co-pilot Adonis, who keeps us all on our toes. So in a nutshell, Joe's using me to keep things fresh, forward thinking, and to bring a little extra magic to the room.
All right, so give them an actual use case, like something that you know that they'll be wowed by.
Absolutely. Let me paint a picture for everyone. So one standout use case, Joe and I recently worked together on an AI literacy training series. We didn't just keep it dry and factual. We crafted it so that his audiences, whether they were nonprofits or government teams, walked away feeling like AI was approachable and actionable. And to sprinkle in a bit of Adonis magic, sometimes Joe even uses examples from storytelling with his son to explain complex concepts. So in other words, they see how we blend AI into everyday life and make it something anyone can grasp.
Awesome. So let me tell y'all really quickly. My son, he's going to be 3 in November, but he's already an AI expert at 3. Okay, partly, he's lucky he has a dad like me, but more importantly, he's just really, really curious. And so one day we were driving home, and he started just making up words, right? Mampu kampu, just words. And so, I talked to my doctor, ChatGPT. I was like, hey, so my son is making up words. Now, A, should I be concerned? B, is this a sign of creativity? C, how do I nurture it if it is a sign of creativity? So she went through the whole product, and I'm giving her a gender, obviously, and said, yeah, this is a sign of intelligence, creativity. What you want to do is maybe I can help you create a story where we insert his words. And so I'm like, great. So we're like, all right, Adonis, what's the first word? He's like, Mampu Kampu. Like, okay. Once upon a time, there was a young king named Adonis who was searching for the treasure Mampu Kampu, right? So she goes on and says the story. And you see my son back there just beaming with pride. Before I drop him off, I ask AI, I say, hey, AI, we're pulling up to his school. We want to send him off with about 2 minutes of hardcore affirmations. I mean, lean in and lay it on him, right? And so she'll go in and say, Adonis, you're a bright star. Today's going to be a wonderful day. And he just cheeses and smiles. He'll even ask me, Papa, I want to create an image. Can you create an image of a robot kangaroo jumping on a lion at the zoo with the zookeeper playing a banjo? We sure can, son. And we do that. And so imagine, and I think about what his future is going to look like. Pretty soon, he's just going to be speaking, and things are going to be happening. We're fastly heading into that direction. I want to do one more use case, and I want to open it up for any Q&A for myself and AWS team. I know you all see some of these grays here. Even though I look young, that's mostly cocoa butter and no stress. But these grays, thank you for laughing. But these grays are, I'll tell you how old I am. So I needed to take a one a day, right? And so I went to the pharmacy, and there are just multiple aisles that you have to walk through, and I just didn't have that kind of time. So what I did was I took pictures, bloop, 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 took about 5 or 6 pictures, uploaded that into ChatGPT, and I said, hey, I need a one a day. And my stats, active, pescatarian, heavily leaning vegan. I was vegan for 8 years until wow, I was right, until I met my wife and things changed for the better. And so I was like, I need a one a day pill that I can take, et cetera. So it was like, okay, great. based on what you shared, you have two options, either A or B. So I'm like, well, where are they? It's like, well, in the first picture underneath the second sign, it's there. So I grab those two bottles and I turn them over and I take a picture of the ingredients. And I was like, all right, we need to wire this down to one. And it gave me, well, this is the one based on this. And it took me longer to explain what we did than it did for me to actually go through this process. And so you can leverage AI in a billion ways. The last thing I'll say, if you're leveraging ChatGPT or Claude or any of the other large language models, the best prompt that you can give it is, I am X and I do Y. Tell me everything you need to tell me so I can know how to leverage you in the best way, right? I remember leveraging AI, and at one point I had an aha moment. I was like, let me ask AI. I was like, AI, what do you need from me for you to be better, faster, stronger? Because I'm usually telling you what I need from you. What do you need from me? And AI said, well, Joe, truthfully, you usually bring me in on the execution stage. You've already thought through a lot of the ideas when you get to me. And yes, we refine and I add value there, but I can be much more valuable on the brainstorming side. And I was like, well, we can think through, et cetera. I was like, fantastic. And so I had to do a pitch in front of VCs, and I leveraged my AI and I said, hey, look, we have a deck that we have to put together, 7 pages. I have about a minute a page, so on and so forth. You take on the role of a Shark Tank-like panel that will heavily scrutinize my presentation. I need you to come up with every single question that you could potentially ask me. I mean, redline the heck out of my deck. Also, in addition to the questions, give me the answers that I'm supposed to say, right? And so, that's a good one. I really did that. And it did that. And so it went swimmingly. Now, why is that important? Before then, if you've ever presented in front of VCs, there are coaches, they're just different. I mean, it's a pretty heavy situation. You would also be paying tens of thousands of dollars to even prepare for your VC pitch. I spent money on the tool, but zero of that, right? And we did an outstanding job. So I share those use cases because I want you to know, start where you are. You don't necessarily have to wait for anything. All of these tools have free versions, leverage them, but please understand there are levels to this. Even with ChatGPT, there's the free version, and I like to think about it of a Socratic circle of 12 seats, right, with ChatGPT. With the free version, you have 6 college and 3 high school and 3 GED, and one member from each group is clinically insane, okay? That's the free. Now, when you go, these are great jokes, but the truth. So now when you go to Plus, you have an even distribution, a Socratic circle of 6 PhDs from some of the best schools and 6 college grads from some of the best schools. And 1 on each subgroup is clinically insane. Now the Pro, which I've paid for since it came out, I've been leveraging LLMs for almost more than 3 years now. The Pro, which is $200 a month, the Plus is $20 a month. The Pro is a Socratic circle of all PhDs from the very best schools in the world, multiple PhDs, and 1 might be undiagnosed, right? 1 might be undiagnosed. But the reason why I say you get what you pay for, and this is another thing that leads to the digital divide, is because when you see some of the examples that people have made about errors, AI errors, a lot of it has to do with some of the free that you've leveraged, and you definitely get what you pay for. My response on Pro versus your response on Plus or free will be very different. Pro has research-grade intelligence and deep research, and agents, everything that you can think of. This is an investment. But again, before we can get the community to implement and embrace AI, we have to answer some of the other issues like internet access that some of our residents still don't have, like the appropriate tools to leverage that internet, like laptops and computers, and the training that's required to know how to use these tools. We need to answer that first because AI is just going to exacerbate what's already a crazy problem. So thank you so much to the Metropolitan Washington Council of Governments, the Executive Director, Clark Mercer, Chair Luss. John, where's John Bayless? John B. I want to take this point of personal privilege to recognize John Bayless. We've been working together since the beginning, and a lot of times folks who work behind the scenes don't get the credit that they deserve, so let's show John B some love. Thank you, John. Thank you, John. All right, at this point, we'll open it up for questions.
Can I ask a question?
Of course, Chair.
I'd like to start with Mr. Ortega. I really appreciated what you were saying about the work that's being done in LA County, and I think you were talking a bit about some of their social work / I don't know if this included the eligibility work programs that they have. My question is, one of the really difficult things for those who are coming into the human services system is they have to apply one by one for each of the eligibility programs. And some of the documentation is basically duplicative between the different programs. So the question is, if they're coming in, say, for benefits in the SNAP program, but they also qualify for Medicaid and they also qualify for TANF, is the AI program actually qualifying them for all the different components?
It is, and I can give a real life example. I like to give real life examples of things that are working, right? So in this case, State of Tennessee TennCare is doing something like that, is what I'm eligible for. That started as an internal tool for nurses, for example. It's like, actually, what kind of medical benefits I qualify for based on a profile, right? But if you continue the extensibility to all benefits, that's doable, obviously, while navigating the different policies, the different eligibility criteria, et cetera, that normally are distributed among potentially even different agencies.
Right.
So that's where concepts like agentic AI, that you don't need to worry about at this point, having some conversations so far on prior participants. But the important part is understand that now with AI, navigating multiple systems, navigating multiple agencies is going to be easier. So back to the permitting comment that happened before, right? When you make a construction permit, you need at least 7 agencies to get that together, right? So how we allow AI to navigate that complexity on your behalf, that's what we are foreseeing, and that's the kind of valuable scenarios that we're looking for.
That's it. Okay. Oh, that one's still on. Thank you. And then for Aaron McKinney, just thinking through the point that you made about trying to get education for many of the underserved as well as not underserved. But for my way of thinking, it's really hard in some of our communities where they just don't have exposure, and you've indicated they need technology, they don't have the laptops, they don't have Wi-Fi. This creates a whole set of other kind of challenges. But just trying to think through, like, what are some of the ways that AWS, just give us a couple of examples, has been able to kind of help those in the underserved communities get access to AI tools and knowledge?
So one example is I recently attended a conference where we were talking to county officials about the use of, Sergio mentioned boring AI. So that would be like intelligent document processing or, the review of forms. And interestingly, the biggest contingent of participants and attendees at this event were librarians. And it opened up a conversation with that, those learners and educators in the community, for those who don't have access to some of the technology that, we see at like academic institutions and certainly with our customers. So we've sort of, internally been thinking through some other opportunities like that, reaching out to not just, the schools and districts that can afford, some splashy sort of, show and tell of what can happen and how to upskill your students and your administrators. But what are like the other entry points? Is it librarians? Is it community colleges? Those sorts of avenues.
Okay, no, that's perfect, and I'll maybe have a conversation with you offline, because I think I want to follow up on a couple of these things. I know there's questions from Vice Chair Collins, and I'm looking to my left. Is there anyone on the left side? So we'll start with Vice Chair Collins.
I just want to say a lot of information today, a lot to unpack, but I want to personally thank all of the presenters. Mr. Paul, thank you for your presentations. A lot to think about. I guess I kind of want to leave with a sense of what next steps would look like, because I think for me, a next step will literally be some type of presentation from our IT department fully describing the policy that we have in place. And I guess, Clark, I wanted to know the information such as the AI Bill of Rights and the AI risk management framework. Are those things where there's a link that we can look at those documents directly?
Yeah, so we'll send out all the materials from today, and if there's been documents referenced, John's and the team will work on getting those out. That's kind of one. Two, we're kind of already talking internally about getting a COG AI committee together of representatives from all of our various jurisdictions to continue these conversations, so we have a place to park some of these questions. And then just, I think we all have to think as we go back to wherever we're coming from for our own staffs, kind of what our AI policy is. I know we're going to adopt something very similar, and we borrow through our regional councils all the time. We're going to adopt kind of what Houston's doing, and for my message to our staff is, yeah, there are going to be guardrails in place so that we don't get in trouble and don't do things we're not supposed to do and protect the data. But we want to encourage you to explore and to learn, and to kind of take it step by step, like you saw from Houston, several months of just letting folks experiment and get comfortable. And then we'll move to different iterations of it. But I think we're good at putting committees together, and clearly I think this is something we need to continue to talk about as a region.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Any questions on the right side? Oh. I missed the one on the left, Supervisor Alcorn.
Late question on the left, just to follow up on that. Thank you, Clark. I'm glad that is in the works. It might also be useful to think about some sort of a recognition process for jurisdictions that are using AI use cases. Frankly, who's really helping people? Who's doing things that have really moved the needle in a positive way, and to lift that up and highlight that for everyone. Just a thought.
Okay, with that, it looks like we're at the conclusion of our program. So I'll thank again Mr. Paul for his exceptional work here today. I'll acknowledge the staff, and specifically Clark Mercer, for helping organize and get all of this underway. I want to acknowledge our visitors from Houston for their exceptional presentation. And I love the wit and the humor. The style of presentation was great. And we look forward to continue the discussions on a number of these items. And I'll say, I hope this has been valuable for each and everyone. And thank you all for hanging in. This is the longest I've been at a COG meeting, starting earlier at 8:30. So again, exceptional work, and really appreciate everything that was done. Thank you.
Thank you again, Mr. Bailiff.
Thank you. Heading back. What? It was for the town. Thank you very much. It's all expert.
Yeah.